After stepping out, Lin Yun did only one thing. He handed the old butler a few dozen bottles of freshly compounded potions, then went straight back into the alchemy lab. He wasn't worried about the Gilded Rose at all. Pavey was running it. The old butler had served Loch Merlin for decades and knew the trade inside out. Even with money tight, he had cleaned up the shop and gotten it back on its feet in no time. That alone proved the place was in safe hands. And those potions helped too. They weren't ordinary alchemy brews. When Lin Yun studied the dragon blood ink, he wrote down a recipe. He couldn't make the true mana baptism potion, yet since the materials were incomplete, but he realized he could still create a substitute. These compounded potions didn't improve the body the way mana baptism did, but they carried part of its effect. They were perfect for magic apprentices attempting their first real mana gathering. With one of these, even a mediocre apprentice could push up to 9th rank without much trouble. Lin Yun was sure of one thing. The city had countless apprentices stuck at low levels, desperate for a breakthrough. A potion like this would sell. At the very least, it would cover the Gilded Rose's daily costs without issue. With that settled, Lin Yun locked himself in the lab and didn't come out for 3 full months. He spent every day buried in magic research. To the mages of this era, his behavior would look almost insane. A 20-year-old who had already stepped into magehood and reached 5th rank was doing better than most people could dream of. If nothing went wrong, he could become a great mage before 30. After that, he would still have time to aim for high mage. If he reached that level, he'd stand beside the 3 giants of Sage Tower, one of the few people powerful enough to look down on all of Thousand Sail City. How could anyone not be satisfied with that? But Lin Yun wasn't like them. He had lived through the future's final age, when mana had dried up and survival meant risking your life just to squeeze a little energy from the void. He had watched mages walk beyond the shelter tower for a chance at mana, only to never return. He understood what it meant to live in starvation and fear. So this era felt like heaven to him. Mana filled the air. Resources were everywhere. The world was alive again. During his first days after transmigrating, he barely slept. He was terrified he'd wake up and find it was all a dream. When he finally accepted that this paradise was real, the joy he felt was something no mage of this era could understand. And they also couldn't understand why he pushed himself so hard. To him, the freedom to absorb mana, to study without limits, was already a treasure worth fighting for. That hunger, mixed with knowledge far beyond this time, let him cross a road that should have taken 10 years in just a few months. 3 months later, Lin Yun quietly reached 9th rank. Only one step remained before Great Mage. For Lin Yun, Great Mage was the first level that truly meant control over his power in this borrowed body. The words Mage and Great Mage were close, but the gap between them was huge. Once a mage shattered and rebuilt their mana whirlpool, they entered a different world. Their meditation output multiplied several dozen times. Metamagic began to appear. A great mage could kill 10 normal mages without breaking a sweat, and that was not an exaggeration. But Lin Yun still couldn't take that last step. Mafa Merlin's body had a serious flaw. To force the breakthrough safely, he needed only one thing: mana baptism. He already had dragon blood, but he was still missing several other materials. Raymond hadn't returned from his trip, so there was no hope there yet. Looks like I'll have to get them through Sage Tower, Lin Yun sighed, sealing the dragon blood in ice. If any place in Thousand Sail City could gather everything he needed, it was the Sage Tower. 3 high mages, a dozen great mages, hundreds of mages, and countless apprentices. They burned through rare materials every day. Only an organization that huge could meet his list. It's been a while since I visited the library, too. He straightened his clothes, planning to stop by the tower, check the library, and ask Solon about buying materials on the way. Boss! Boss! The moment he stepped out, Remy came sprinting toward him, breathless. What is it? Boss Pavey told me to find you. He says you need to come back right now. Ferio brought people and surrounded your house. Lin Yun blinked, genuinely surprised. So, you think I'm easy to bully? I paid the debt, and you still dare to come again? Looks like you didn't learn a thing. Remy, Lin Yun said calmly, pulling a slip of paper from his bag. Go to Sage Tower for me. Find a mage named Solon and give him this list. Ask if he can help me gather these materials. It was everything he still needed for mana baptism. Yes, boss. After sending him off, Lin Yun headed home. From a distance, he saw the crowd. Dozens of people ringed the mansion, with Ferio at the front. Surrounded like that, the man looked swollen with confidence. Hands on his hips, he shouted loud enough to shake the street. The thief is inside. I saw him with my own eyes. Bold bastard, stealing from the viper nest. Everyone, search every corner. Find that damned thief. So that cheap uncle had gotten greedier. Lin Yun stepped down from the carriage, almost amused. Using a thief as an excuse to barge in? If that logic worked, anyone could storm Sage Tower or Monchi's estate whenever they wanted. No thief, they'd say. Impossible, I saw him. You must be helping him. Ridiculous. He studied the group without panic. About 30 to 40 men, all decent fighters. And in the middle stood a man in a gray mage robe. 9th rank. That was overkill. A 9th rank mage was already a top-tier figure in the city, only a breath away from great mage. Hiring someone like that would cost far more than a few thousand gold. Why would Ferio spend that kind of money? Lin Yun frowned. Something didn't add up. Why push this far? When Ferio first came demanding 8,000 gold, Lin Yun assumed he was clinging to Locke's contract to steal the house. After Lin Yun crippled Jimmy's right hand as a warning, he didn't press Ferio too hard. He even paid the debt after selling the Spectra potion. But this new move wasn't about debt anymore. The old contract was shameless, but legal. This was different. Using a thief excuse to enter the estate and bringing a 9th rank mage to back it up was pure aggression. Ferio wouldn't do this unless there was a bigger prize. Is there something hidden in this house? The more Lin Yun thought, the more it fit. Ferio had obsessed over the mansion from the start. He tried to buy it, then tried to search it. If it wasn't about the house, why keep returning for it? Move! Everyone, follow me. We're going in. Ferio roared, leading the group toward the gate. That's enough. Lin Yun wasn't about to let them stroll in like it was a tavern. Still, Ferio strutted forward, riding his borrowed courage. With a 9th rank mage behind him, he felt untouchable. You were smug before, Mafa, he thought, grinning to himself. Cut off Jimmy's hand and treated me like dirt. Now I'm backed by real power. Let's see what you do when I walk into your house. He stepped on a front path. Then his confidence faltered. Why is the ground soft? His boots sank a little. This is the entrance, right? Why does it feel like mud? Ferio froze and stared down at the soil under his feet. The panic in Ferio's voice rose into a sharp, terrified scream. Damn it, this is really a swamp. His huge body was already trapped. He thrashed around in fear, but the harder he struggled, the faster he sank. In seconds, the black mud reached his chest. Watch out, it's a rotten swamp. The 9th rank mage in the center barked, lifting his staff and starting a spell. Rotten Swamp was only a 3rd rank spell. To someone at his level, it was nothing. One soul petrifaction would stop it cold. And that's exactly what he began to cast. If he hardened the ground, they could pull Ferio out safely. But just as he was about to release the spell, a freezing chill swept across the area. Before he could react, the swamp locked into solid ice. The mage halted mid-cast. His spell fizzled uselessly in his grasp, and a backlash stung his chest. The swamp was already frozen, so petrifaction meant nothing now. Still, he couldn't just stand there and watch Ferio turn into a statue of ice. The chief had told him to protect that fool. He didn't get time to decide. Lin Yun was already walking over. Uncle, you seem busy today. Lin Yun followed the narrow, dry path without stepping into the frozen mud. He crouched at the edge and smiled down at Ferio. Let me out. Ferio's teeth rattled uncontrollably. The cold felt like blades sliding under his skin. I can pull you out any time. But tell me first, you brought this many people to my home for what reason? To catch a thief, Ferio began, but his support gave way under him. He dropped lower, nearly biting his tongue in panic. Help, grab me, pull me up. Lin Yun watched him sink until only half his face remained above the ice-black muck. Then he casually grabbed Ferio by the collar. Uncle Ferio, don't lie to me. Would you really gather a whole force for one thief? Gee, get me out first. Ferio choked out and fell silent after that. Linyan loosened his hand. Ea, Ferio shrieked as he slid down again. His arms flailed wildly until he barely caught the edge of Lin Yun's robe. He clung to it like it was his last rope in the world. Mafa, I'm your uncle, please. Enough, shut up. The 9th rank mage finally snapped out of his shock. He raised his staff. A vine erupted from the ground beside the frozen swamp, thick as a man's arm. It shot forward, wrapped around Ferio, and yanked him out in one clean pull, dropping him onto the stone. I wasn't finished asking questions. Lin Yun brushed dirt from his robe, sounding annoyed, but he didn't really care. Ferio was probably just a messenger. Squeezing him wouldn't reveal the real reason. The real problem was the mage. That 9th rank caster stared at Lin Yun like he was looking at a puzzle that had just insulted him. The boy was young, around 20, wearing a fresh black robe. His first 2 spells suggested 3rd to 6th rank at most. Talented for his age, sure, but to a peak rank mage, still nothing but a junior. So he didn't waste time. Mafa Merlin, give me the property deed, and I guarantee you and everyone inside walk away alive. Lin Yun didn't refuse right away. He tilted his head like he was weighing something. You'd better think fast, the mage said coldly. I don't offer mercy twice. 10 seconds. Either you hand it over, or you die with it. I was thinking about whether I should let you all leave here in one piece, Lin Yun replied. Silence slammed down on the yard. The 9th rank mage stared, stunned. For a few seconds, he couldn't even speak. Then his face hardened. You're asking to die. His voice turned sharp and ugly. Even Ferio, shivering on the ground, could see the man was furious. Lin Yun had stepped straight on his pride. Kill him, the mage snapped, flicking his hand. The Viper Nest elites surged forward together. These weren't street thugs. The weakest among them were 3rd rank fighters, and the strongest were already 7th rank. 30 or 40 of them moving at once was a force most mercenary groups couldn't match. Only the Viper Nest had enough muscle to throw out people like this so casually. They moved in practiced waves. Warriors and thieves sprinted in with blades drawn. Archers vaulted up to high ground, arrows already nocked, ready to fire the instant they saw an opening. Some of them even felt it was overkill. For one young mage, did they really need their best? That thought died immediately. Lin Yun's first spell was already finished. Another rotten swamp spread out in front of him. More than a dozen charging warriors stepped onto the ground and suddenly felt it collapse. Their boots sank. The surface turned to foul mud, dragging them down no matter how hard they fought. No one expected a cast that fast. Rotten swamp normally took a mage 20 seconds. Even a 9th rank mage needed 10. Lin Yun formed it in under 5. That was almost instant. The sudden swamp wrecked their timing. The thieves hadn't even reached his flanks. The archers panicked and released too early. Their arrows flew offline, some missing by meters, the rest barely grazing air near Lin Yun. And Lin Yun was already on his next spell. Faster than the first. No chant, no hand signs, just a sharp burst of ice. An icicle shot forward with a clean whistle and punched through an archer's shoulder, pinning him to a tree behind. The archer's safe position became a trap. He screamed so hard the whole group flinched. The icicle was thick as an arm, drilled through him like a spear and stuck there. Even seasoned killers from a Viper Nest turned pale at the sound. Metamagic, the 9th rank mage blurted, frozen in disbelief as he recognized what he had just seen.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
He was a powerful 9th rank mage, so how could he not know the casting time of these spells? That rotten swamp was already very abnormal. A mere 5 seconds to materialize this 3rd rank spell. Even as a 9th rank mage, he couldn't do something like this. Not to mention that the following icicle spell had been cast without any incantation at all. This was definitely instant cast or quicken metamagic. It was only metamagic, and for mages that had reached the 5th rank who didn't have 1 or 2 metamagics. But it was just that they normally couldn't be used casually. Using metamagic with a spell greatly increased the amount of mana consumed, and an ordinary mage couldn't support the cost, so they simply wouldn't be used except at critical moments. Someone like Maffa Merlin, who had used 2 metamagics so quickly, was definitely an inexperienced newbie in the eyes of a 9th rank mage. If one used his trump card first and expended all their mana, what could they use to turn the situation around? Of course, he wasn't going to warn this youngster about his bad habit. He would just let this youth learn that the consequences of angering a 9th rank mage were too much for just anyone to handle. He began chanting his incantation. He didn't use any metamagic, and he didn't even further tax his mana whirlpool to hasten the casting speed. He wanted to knock this fellow down a few pegs with a display of strength, making him understand why the magic world was so hierarchical. Just 1 rank of difference would be a huge factor. It wasn't something that could be bridged with just 2 metamagics. The 9th rank mage was chanting the incantation for the Thunderstorm spell. It would take 20 seconds and a large amount of mana, making Thunderstorm one of the most powerful spells below the Great Mage realm. As the 9th rank mage chanted, the originally clear sky became covered with black clouds. Lightning started surging amidst the clouds and gathering together, the fierce, fluctuating electricity letting out screeching and crackling sounds. Thunderstorm's power was that frightening. Even if that spell had yet to be completed, just the scene of it materializing was enough to make people feel numb. But it all seemed to have no effect on Lin Yin. Lin Yin was still standing at the side of the rotten swamp with a relaxed expression, as if he hadn't noticed the sky being covered in black clouds. He raised his hands, and another icicle flew out, just like before. No incantation, no gesture, and another archer was nailed to a tree. How could he still have mana? The 9th rank mage couldn't help frowning as he continued with the spell. Seems like I must hurry. The 9th rank mage silently urged his mana whirlpool to speed up the completion of the spell. But as he did so, that young mage cast another icicle. Yet another archer was pinned to a tree. This was already the 3rd one. At that time, the 9th rank mage was a little regretful. If he had known earlier that this young mage had enough mana to support 4 uses of his metamagic, he wouldn't have cast his Thunderstorm normally. That way, he could have at least saved the 3rd archer from his fate. No good, have to be faster. But Lin Yin was faster than him. Another icicle followed by one more, and another one, and another one. The 9th rank mage's Thunderstorm was still not ready when a rain of icicle spells pinned a dozen archers to trees or just the ground. Once they were all immobilized, Lin Yin also cast a frost spell, and just like when he handled Ferio, he froze all the warriors in the rotten swamp. He had finished preparing the mighty Thunderstorm, but the 9th rank mage was staring at the scene foolishly, a blank expression on his face. Shock could be seen in his eyes as he stood there in a daze, feeling alarm and dread as he looked at that young mage. That young mage let out about a dozen instant cast icicles, incapacitating all those archers. What kind of concept was that? The 9th rank mage had considered himself quite powerful, and could even cast a Thunderstorm in just 20 seconds, but instant casting a dozen icicles during that time, he didn't even dare to think about it. This was already something beyond what a mage could do. Whether it was the use of metamagic or normal casting, it was impossible. The 9th rank mage even felt that it was impossible for most great mages. Perhaps only those who had advanced to that realm for a long time, or those peak existences preparing to break through to the high mage realm, could instant cast a dozen icicles in 20 seconds. But now, there was a young, 20-year-old mage that had managed to do so in front of him. He could feel that he had chosen to fight a battle that he never should have. For a mage with such powerful abilities, it would be really simple for him to kill a 9th rank mage. And let alone himself, the entire Viper nest might not even be worth his time. What should I do? The Thunderstorm was still ready and flickering with electricity. The black clouds covered the sky, and thunder surged. He only needed to shout the last word and direct the spell to come down to raise everything within 10 meters. But the mage held back that last word. This foe's display of magic had driven him to the edge of despair. He didn't even have the intention to struggle now. He just stood there in a daze, fear and helplessness filling his thoughts. He wasn't that powerful mage standing at the peak of his realm anymore, and instead looked like a lamb ready for slaughter. "Follow me inside." After dealing with a dozen archers, Lin Yun didn't continue to make things difficult and beckoned the 9th rank mage to follow him into the building. Of course, there was no need to make things difficult. At this point, they were all scared out of their wits. The others weren't fools or lunatics, and they didn't dare to make any trouble. Even the loudly yelling Ferio was now hiding on the side, not daring to even breathe. Lin Yin went through the door with a 9th rank mage in tow, before running into the anxious old butler. "Young master, Ferio brought many people over this time. Did they make things difficult for you?" Hearing the old butler's question, the 9th rank mage's heart nearly stopped. "Grandpa, can't you see? Those warriors in the frozen swamp outside. Those archers nailed to the trees. Who is making things difficult for who?" "It's all right. I sent them away." "All right, Uncle Pave, can you get us something to eat? I haven't eaten since I woke up." "Of course, take a seat. I'll send someone to get you something to eat." After sending the old butler away, Lin Yun led the 9th rank mage to his study. "Introduce yourself first." Yes. The 9th rank mage stood in place, trembling with fear, afraid that he would somehow carelessly anger that powerful mage that had such frightening abilities. With Lin Yun questioning him, how could he dare to hide anything from him? "I am Larry, one of the 4 vice leaders of the Viper Nest. I'm 40 this year. I reached the 9th rank 2 years ago." "Okay, stop there." Lin Yun didn't have the time to listen to this guy being so long-winded. After learning about his identity, he directly cut in and asked, "So, Larry, you brought so many people to surround my house. What was your intention?" "This." "Oh, right. Don't even mention something like capturing a thief." And thus, each mage I would be like a pair of eyes for the caster, and everything they saw would appear in the mage's mind. But the average mage could at most use 3 to 5 mage eyes. Not many could be like Lin Yun, releasing over a dozen mage eyes, and apparently without feeling the slightest bit of strain. Each mage, I needed extremely accurate control. That kind of control was even more difficult than what was faced when forming the Mana Whirlpool. Someone who had just advanced to become a mage wouldn't dare to try to control one, let alone many of them. Lin Yun spent 10 minutes to release over a dozen mage eyes, and then controlled them to squeeze their way into various corners of the house. When Loch Merlin bought the house, he had spent more or less 100,000 gold. It could be considered a huge expenditure to the merchants of Thousand Sail City, and although it couldn't compare with the vast 10 hectares of the Manchi Manor, it still wasn't something that could be searched in a short amount of time. A dozen mage eyes sounded like a lot, but inside such a big house, it truly wasn't very conspicuous. Thus, Lin Yun closed the doors to his study and entered seclusion, because he knew that this could take a very long time. After the mage eyes flew out of the study, they all headed for various parts of the house. Some went to the living room, some went to the courtyard, some to the kitchen, some to the bedroom. Under Lin Yun's control, the dozen-plus mage eyes started thoroughly searching the entire house. Time slowly passed. The great amount of mana consumed made Lin Yun slowly pale from exertion. After an hour, Lin Yun picked up the first mana crystal and quickly drew the mana from within before he continued controlling the mage eyes. But this time, Lin Yun only lasted 40 minutes before he had to use the second mana crystal. Successively absorbing the mana from 2 mana crystals didn't improve Lin Yun's complexion, making it even worse. Mana crystals could indeed supply mana, but this kind of mana had impurities. An ordinary mage wouldn't dare to absorb it directly. Only Lin Yun, who once absorbed mana from the Netherstorm, would dare to do this. But even Lin Yun couldn't keep absorbing to continue his search. Lin Yun estimated that he would be able to absorb mana from one more mana crystal at most before he would have to stop the search and meditate for a while. Otherwise, the amount of impurities entering his body would cause some trouble for him. After 20 minutes, when Lin Yun was just about to pick up the third mana crystal, one of the mage's eyes flew into the study on the second floor, before suddenly stopping as it saw something. "It's here!" Lin Yun softly chanted, and the dozen mage eyes instantly returned and converted back into pure mana before blending into Lin Yun's mana whirlpool. At the same time, Lin Yun stood up and pushed open the door that had been closed for about 2 hours, before heading for a staircase that led to the second floor. The study on the second floor was the place that Loch Merlin had used for work. Because it involved many business secrets, he normally hadn't allowed anyone inside. Even his only son, Maffa Merlin, had only been inside a sparse number of times. He hadn't thought much of it before, but now he felt like there was most likely something about this study. After Lin Yun reached the study, he instantly glanced at the bookshelf in the rear. He noticed the 6th book on the 3rd row. It seemed no different from others at first glance, but to Lin Yun, who lived in a library for a long time, there was a huge problem with that book. There were a lot of books on the bookshelf, but this one book had a lot more wear on its cover. Some people might assume that the damage had come from the book being read too many times. Was Loch Merlin not allowed to like books, and this one in particular? Indeed, this could have been an acceptable explanation. The issue was that this book's pages were actually still brand new. How could Loch Merlin read a book without opening the pages? If Lin Yun couldn't notice such a big problem while using magical perception, then his life in the library could be considered to have failed him here. Lin Yun walked to the bookshelf and reached out to see if he could manipulate that book. Sure enough, he heard a kacha echo out. Something had been opened. A secret door, as expected. Lin Yun tried pushing the bookshelf, and surprisingly, the bookshelf was pushed back with a light touch, exposing a tunnel behind it. Lin Yun looked inside and saw that it was very long and very dark. He couldn't tell where this tunnel led. Furthermore, there were some magic fluctuations inside. These kinds of fluctuations weren't exactly strong, but they seemed extremely heavy and had a powerful sealing nature. Lin Yun guessed that this should be an alchemy array for suppressing or sealing something. As for the details, he would have to go and see first. Lin Yun casually used a light spell and made the bright and gentle ball of light float 1/2 meter in front of him. He followed it and entered the dark tunnel. Lin Yun walked for about 5 minutes in the gloomy tunnel before reaching the end. At the end of the tunnel was a tightly shut stone door, and the fluctuations he felt before came from behind that door. Lin Yun tried to push that stone door open, but it didn't move at all. He looked around, but there was nothing similar to the mechanism on the bookshelf. Lin Yun couldn't help scratching his head as he thought. Don't tell me a key is needed? That doesn't seem right. There's not even a small crack on that stone door, let alone a keyhole. This is... Just as Lin Yun was considering whether or not he should just force his way through, he suddenly noticed that there seemed to be some strange, veined patterns on top of the stone door. Those patterns were quite faint and inconspicuous, especially in the darkness of the tunnel. Lin Yun originally thought they were just decorative designs on the door, but after looking at them carefully, he found out that this wasn't the case. It's actually the Nesser language. Before Nassen's 3rd era, there had been 2 huge dynasties. One was the Yashan dynasty that had already disappeared in the River of Time. It was said that this was a dynasty that had been established from divine magic. Unfortunately, it was far too ancient an era, and the history couldn't be verified. And what followed was the Nesser dynasty. The Nesser dynasty was formed through the joint rule of the dragons and elves. It was said that modern magic had been born in that era, and the 2 powerful races ruled no scent for several millennia. It then slowly collapsed due to endless internal friction, to the point that for many years since then, very few people were able to find vestiges of the Nesser dynasty. But there had been one thing from then that was still passed down. The Nesser language. This was a mix of Draconic and Elvish. It was concise and accurate, and many mages considered it the most perfect language for magic. Even countless years later, at the peak of the magic civilization, the Nesser language was one of the compulsory fields of knowledge that mages had to learn. Many advanced spells had to be written in Nesser runes. Some profound fields of magic knowledge were even described only with Nesser runes because the descriptions would become long, tedious, and very complicated. Even simple reading would be very convoluted. But the Nesser language had been very widespread. Well, that was after the plane colonies had been established. Those who mastered the Nesser language were the mages at the top, archmages at least. So, who left the Nesser runes on the stone door? Lin Yun looked over the rest of the door for a while, but didn't find anything else, so he started studying Nesser runes on the door. This was quite easy for Lin Yun, and he only needed 10 minutes to decipher the Nesser runes on the stone door. Simply put, it was a puzzle using Nesser runes. Everything was very simple after that. Lin Yun just spoke the answer to the riddle in the Nesser language. The shut door immediately confirmed the answer and opened. Damn! Lin Yun's eyes were nearly blinded when the door opened. 3 red diamonds were embedded in the stone wall, emitting a dazzling light that pierced into the darkness that had been surrounding him, and they were filling the air with fierce magic fluctuations, making it difficult to breathe. Those were abyssal magic diamonds. It was rumored that the eyes of a demon would transform into those after death. Each one had an impressive amount of mana. Every mage would yearn for such a valuable treasure. Even in this era that was so abundant in resources, the abyssal magic diamond could be described as a priceless treasure. If one appeared on the market, it would make countless mages go crazy, and even those high mages would pay any price for them. With huge amounts of pure mana and shocking mana conductivity, the abyssal magic diamond was one of the best mana sources and one of the easiest to use. Whether it was for direct mana absorption or for operating an alchemy array, it could remove the step transforming the mana impurities. Because its mana was the purest, there was simply no need to worry about impurities. And all this was just with a raw abyssal magic diamond that had been roughly treated. If one fell into the hands of a great alchemist, the radiance of the abyssal magic diamond would really blossom. Those peak alchemists could even use abyssal magic diamonds to craft spiritual magic tools. Spiritual level, what kind of concept was that? The best magic tools circulating on the market were mostly superior level, yet the cheapest of those would be bought for over 10,000 gold. And above the superior level, there were still the excellent and inheritance levels. It was the spiritual level that many great alchemists spent their entire lives pursuing, the goal of creating a spiritual magic tool. The spiritual level, as the name implied, would give the items spirituality. Those magic tools weren't just pieces of equipment anymore. They were connected with their owner's blood, and their power could even be compared to that of a high mage. In other words, having a spiritual magic tool was equivalent to having a high mage aid you in battle. And now, there were as many as 3 abyssal magic diamonds in front of Lin Yun. This was simply unthinkable. If these 3 abyssal magic diamonds were brought out into the public eye, all the alchemists of Thousand Sail City might go completely crazy. Hold on, what's that? Just as Lin Yun was getting dazzled by his find, Lin Yun suddenly noticed some runes carved in between the 3 abyssal magic diamonds. Lin Yun studied the stone wall for a bit and roughly understood what was going on. This was an alchemy array built upon 6 runes. The specific effect was to extract mana from the 3 abyssal magic diamonds. But things were more complicated when he followed those runes down. There was another alchemy array under the 3 abyssal magic diamonds, but the structure of this array was 100 times more complicated than the previous one, and it was 100 times more expensive too. Each rune was written in void ink, while a few of the mana circuits even used soul-burning ink, not to mention the over 20 magic nodes. Even Lin Yun could barely distinguish them from one another. It seemed to him that the effect of this alchemy array was to use the abyssal magic diamond's mana to keep the space stable. Space! Lin Yun looked back at those 3 abyssal magic diamonds, suddenly realizing something. No wonder. The questions in Lin Yun's mind got their answer upon recognizing this alchemy array. Lin Yun didn't need to study the array any further to know that behind these 3 abyssal magic diamonds on the stone wall was a path. A planar path. The so-called planar path was a passage between planes. In fact, as early as the 3rd dynasty, some people had suggested that no scent wasn't the only world in the boundless universe. But those theories had no physical evidence to back them up at the time. That was the case up until the end of the Third Era, when some mages brought it up again and tried to prove the existence of different planes. In the last 100 years of the Third Dynasty, the Crimson Tower finally opened a planar path. Afterwards, there was nothing afterwards. The powerful group of mages from the Crimson Tower set foot on the planar path, but they never returned. The entire Crimson Tower fell apart overnight and finally died out due to endless power struggles created by the void left behind. After that, speaking of planar paths was a taboo topic for a long time. Up until the current times, many years later, all kinds of magic research would progress day after day. Mages would grow more powerful, and ambitions would keep rising, especially when some lucky guy brought back all kinds of rare resources from another plane. Plane colonization would become something the mages of this era would jointly work on. Each plane hidden behind those planar paths would become gold mines in the eyes of the mages. But only a few planar paths were known, and they were mostly in the hands of Nascent's most powerful forces. Try to gain control of one would be courting death. Thus, each time a new planar path appeared, countless forces would fight over it, because to them, a new planar path meant a new opportunity for endless wealth. They were willing to pay an unimaginable price for the sake of a new planar path. At that time, why had Lin Yun agreed to take over the flashing gold chamber of commerce when he figured out which era of Nascent's history he was in? It was because Lin Yun wanted to establish his own planar path by taking advantage of the power of his flashing gold chamber of commerce. To a mage, there was nothing more enticing than a private plane. That wasn't just an opportunity to get endless wealth. Completely controlling a private plane would allow a mage's starting point to be elevated, letting them rise above all livings. It was the power of an entire plane. This was also why, at the peak of Nascent's magic civilization, the mages close to being omnipotent would still endlessly campaign for the chance to get a plane of their own. And Lin Yun had ended up finding an unknown planar path hidden inside his own house. Seems like these 3 abyssal magic diamonds can't be moved. Despite this painful fact, compared to a whole plane, 3 abyssal magic diamonds couldn't compare. Lin Yun was almost certain that these 3 abyssal magic diamonds had been brought back from the other plane by Loch Merlin. In no sense, the value of the abyssal magic diamonds was inestimable, but they might be everywhere in some other plane. Lin Yun stopped thinking about the abyssal magic diamonds and started focusing on the alchemy array on the stone wall. The level of that array was very high. Lin Yun estimated that an average great alchemist would be unable to reach this level of achievement. It was most likely the work of a peak great alchemist or even a master alchemist. In the last 20 years, Lin Yun had mostly just tried to survive, while the remaining time was spent on trying to improve his knowledge of magic. He had only hastily read through the alchemy books, since materials were so scarce. Besides filling his brains with alchemy knowledge, the times he had actually crafted something from them could be counted on his fingers. Something like this master-level alchemy array was very difficult for Lin Yun to decipher. After about half an hour, Lin Yun's gaze moved away from the stone wall. Sure enough, it really is a master alchemist. After analyzing the structure of the alchemy array, Lin Yun was certain of it. That array was definitely the work of a master alchemist. But fortunately, that master alchemist didn't place any obstacles on that alchemy array to prevent others from analyzing it. Maybe due to confidence, or just on a whim. Lin Yun was startled when he heard that strange sound and instantly moved back, a small, bright flame appearing at his fingertips. As the flame lit up the area, Lin Yun saw that at the place he had been standing, a skeleton was pushing its way out of the ground. The skeleton's body was covered in black mud, and it was holding a rusted scimitar, and 2 phosphorescent flames flickered within its empty sockets. An undead life form? Lin Yun was horrified by the revelation. This was clearly a lowly skeleton warrior, the lowest life form amongst the undead. How come my luck is so good? I casually found a planar path, but it ended up leading to the famous undead plane. Such a cruel joke. Even at the peak of the magic civilization, Mages wouldn't rashly set foot in the undead plane. That place was just too dangerous, and even powerful mages could fall there. Endless swarms of the undead. They had unlimited stamina and did not fear death or destruction, making the undead plane one of the most difficult planes to conquer. Lin Yun once read a note clearly saying that during the entire length of the plane colonization era, only 3 people truly conquered the undead plane. The plane colonization era lasted for 10,000 years, so who knew how many outstanding mages appeared during that period? But only 3 of them managed to conquer the undead plane. What should I do? Lin Yun felt a bit faint. This wasn't a joke, as the renowned undead plane simply wasn't a place that a 9th rank mage like him could set foot in, let alone a 9th rank mage. Even a high mage, even an archmage would be courting death by stepping into the undead plane. I have to quickly leave this place. If I wait until more of the undead are alarmed, I won't be able to leave even if I want to. With this in mind, Lin Yun chanted something, and the small flame at his fingertip immediately turned into a blaze, which turned into a fire arrow and flew at the skeleton warrior. At the same time, Lin Yun hurriedly retreated and kept chanting line after line, matching these words with various gestures. The mana fluctuations in the surroundings became fiercer. The fire arrow struck the skeleton warrior's body, exploding with a bang and sending sparks and white bone fragments scattering from the impact point. The entire left arm of the skeleton warrior had exploded. That kind of injury would be enough to seriously harm any ordinary combatant and seriously incapacitate them. But it was far from enough for an undead. After receiving the fire arrow attack, the skeleton warrior was only staggered a bit. And then, as if it hadn't been affected at all, it got up and lifted its rusted scimitar once again before charging at the retreating Lin Yun. This was the frightening advantage of the undead. They were very troublesome to kill. Losing a hand or a leg was a much less significant loss for them. Besides reducing mobility and effectiveness, they still would be able to fight. But Lin Yun had already anticipated that. After shooting out the fire arrow, he didn't stop chanting, and just as the skeleton warrior was raising its weapon, Lin Yun's second spell was cast. Thunder Hammer. A large hammer with electricity surging all over it and made of flickering gold light appeared out of nowhere in front of the skeleton warrior before smashing down, emitting a clap of thunder. A deep fracture appeared on the skeleton warrior's sternum, followed by a lot of low sounds that grew until a sharp crack rang out. The skeleton warrior wasn't able to scream, but the fires in those empty eye sockets were raging as the scimitar in its hand still began to swing down. But what awaited it was a second thunder hammer. Another bang echoed, and this thunder hammer completely smashed the skeleton warrior's skull, extinguishing the fires in the eye sockets in that instant. The scimitar fell to the ground with a clang, along with the bones of the skeleton warrior. Phew! Lin Yun let out a sigh of relief. He skillfully rummaged through the skeleton warrior's skull while carefully checking his surroundings, preparing to use the planar path to return to No Scent at any time. Soon, Lin Yun found a black undead essence from the remains of the skeleton warrior. This was what remained after the soul, fire, stopped burning. It contained a large amount of death energy and was an extremely good material to add to a magic weapon. It would add death energy to each attack, causing the enemy to have all kinds of negative thoughts, and against a foe with less resistance, these negative thoughts could make the difference between victory and defeat. This kind of undead essence could reach a price similar to that of an excellent magic tool, if put on the market. Not bad luck. The skeleton warrior's soul fire was quite weak, so it was very improbable for it to become an undead essence after it was destroyed. It was truly lucky for Lin Yun to get one from this. But even if his luck wasn't bad here, Lin Yun was still in a terrible mood. After all, each planar path gave the opportunity to attain endless wealth. At the peak of the magic civilization, the powerful mages were mostly relying on planar paths to make their marks on the world before setting foot at the peak of No Scent. Unfortunately, this planar path led to the famous undead plane. But giving up completely was beyond Lin Yun. Though, Lin Yun had no plans to consider profiting from this plane for a long time. He was lucky this time. He only met one skeleton warrior and got an undead essence from it. But who would guarantee that he would be as lucky next time when he might run into 10,000 of them? What if he met a lich? That was a frightening existence on the level of an archmage. Moreover, such an existence wasn't that rare in the undead plane. In a plane where even black dragons could be found in a large group, what were a few dozen or even 100 liches? Hold on, after remembering all kinds of things about the undead plane, Lin Yun suddenly thought of an issue. So, why was there only one skeleton warrior? It's rumored that the undead plane is teeming with endless undead. There should be a sea of skeleton warriors here. How could I have met just one skeleton warrior after such a long time? This isn't logical. Is it possible that this isn't actually the undead plane? This possibility made Lin Yun's hand shake. Yes or no? The difference was too huge. One side had the chance for endless wealth while the other side had nothing but hardships. Lin Yun made a risky decision for this. He interrupted his chant to activate the runes that would let him return, and instead chanted the mage I spell. 3 mages' eyes blended into the night one after the other as they stuck close to the ground while moving at a very fast speed. From what the mage eyes showed him, Lin Yun could see that there really weren't any more undead creatures on the entire Black Wasteland. This discovery made Lin Yun's breathing quicken. But after thinking about it, he still had some reservations, so he cast Detect Undead. This time, Lin Yun felt them. There truly weren't any more of them across the wasteland, but they were sleeping underground. If they weren't alarmed, they might not wake up for 8 to 10 years. Lin Yun was still surprised to discover that among all the undead life forms under the ground, the most powerful was only a bone devil. It had to be known that the strength of a bone devil was at most equivalent to a peak great mage. This didn't make much sense. Across such a huge black wasteland, how could the most powerful life form be a mere bone devil? After all, in the undead plane, banshees and liches filled the place. A mere bone devil. How could it occupy such a huge territory? At this time, Lin Yun was almost certain that this place was most definitely not the undead plane. There weren't enough undead here for that to be the case, and they were also too weak. Something as weak as a bone devil was the strongest in this area. In the undead plane, those mages of the peak era should not even be mentioned. But it wasn't the undead plane, so where was this? The undead were here. There was a dark red crescent moon. The air was filled with death energy, and it had the same smell as the undead plane. All these similarities. The bone plane. With all these clues, Lin Yun patted his head before finally remembering. That's right, this must be the bone plane, a plane with characteristics very similar to those of the undead plane, but its power was countless times lower. This was too different for Lin Yun. In that spacious, decayed library, there had been countless documents about the plane colonization era, and Lin Yun had read some of those when feeling bored, even the more insignificant ones. The bone plane had been discovered somewhere in the middle of the plane colonization era. 3 young mages from the Ivory Tower had accidentally obtained the coordinates of the bone plane during an experiment. So they used the coordinates to create a brand new planar path, and then completely conquered the bone plane within 3 months. That's right, just 3 months. It was most likely the fastest and most cost-efficient plane to conquer in the entire plane colonization era. The young mages were using a worn-out magic battleship, yet they only needed 3 months to conquer the entire plane. That wasn't too surprising, since the level of the bone plane was really too low. The most powerful creature, there was only a bone dragon. The worn-out magic battleship had erased the bone dragon from existence with just one salvo. The 3 young mages had relied on their miraculous conquest of that plane to obtain the favor of the higher-ups of the Ivory Tower and truly become core mages of that powerful force. After several decades of efforts, they successfully entered the council of the Ivory Tower and became major figures there. There were plenty of such stories in that era, but what happened after the story was the most important part. Lin Yun remembered that after the Ivory Tower obtained the bone plane, it truly rose as one of the 7 major forces of No Scent. It not only controlled the Dark Highland for a millennium, but one heaven-rank mage came from it, Bane. Moreover, Bane also had an extraordinary magic tool, the renowned Book of Death. Despite the fact that the Ivory Tower never revealed the reason for their sudden rise, astute observers could guess that the sudden emergence of the Ivory Tower, which had been suppressed by the Caucasus Council for several millennia, was definitely related to the discovery of the Bone Plane by the three young mages. It was a public secret at the time. Following the rise of the Ivory Tower, the bounty of the Bone Plane gradually spread throughout No Scent. Countless people were eyeing that fertile black land. The Ivory Tower left a mage core there and would execute large numbers of trespassers every day, but under the temptation of the possibility for attaining great profits, there would still be countless waves of such people intruding all the time. This situation continued up until Nascent's mana was exhausted. The powerful mages fell one after the other, and the rising Ivory Tower vanished. As for that fertile black land, it finally welcomed a long-lost calm. But all of this had yet to happen. The three young mages stumbled upon the coordinates of this plane over 10,000 years later. But Lin Yun had already set foot on this fertile plain through Loch Merlin's planar path, which meant that perhaps the Ivory Tower would not rule the Dark Highland for over a millennium, and Heaven Mage Bane wouldn't have the extraordinary magic tool, the Book of Death. But for Lin Yun, finding the Bone Plane so early in the timeline came with a serious problem. The conquest would be extremely difficult. When those three mages from the Ivory Tower had discovered the Bone Plane, they had only been able to conquer it within 3 months because they had a magic battleship. Even if it was worn out, it was still a magic battleship. By relying on its power, the three young mages were able to easily conquer the Bone Plane, taking out the most powerful inhabitant in just one salvo. But Lin Yun couldn't do so, as the plane colonization era had just started, and although the magic battleships had already been created, they were far from having their future destructive power. Besides, the current magic battleships were only in the hands of a few of the most powerful forces. Moreover, even if these battleships were as strong now as they eventually would be in the future, they wouldn't fall into Lin Yun's hands. Lin Yun could only rely on himself. But the good news was that Lin Yun had a lot of time. If everything followed the original course of history, then it would only be over 10,000 years later that the young mages of the Ivory Tower would incidentally find the coordinates of the Bone Plane. Lin Yun should still have enough time to increase his strength. When Lin Yun reached the point of being able to contend against a bone dragon, the conquest of the Bone Plane would naturally follow. And before becoming strong enough, Lin Yun could only maintain a low profile. The Bone Plane wasn't something that was impossible for him to explore, but once there, he would have to always remain vigilant. This fertile land was quite fraught with danger for the current Lin Yun. If more than 10 skeleton warriors appeared at the same time, Lin Yun would struggle to keep up, not to mention the sleeping Bone Devil. That was an existence that approached the high mage level. For someone like Lin Yun who had the power of a 9th rank mage, if he bumped into it, his only option would be to flee. Thus, even if the black soil beneath his feet seemed boundless, the area that Lin Yun could explore was only that small plot beside the planar path. Only there would he still be mostly safe. If he found something that he couldn't deal with, he could quickly flee. Lin Yun was exploring this very area at the moment. In a dozen minutes or so, Lin Yun dealt with over 20 skeleton warriors, which brought him 4 undead essences. TSK, TSK, TSK. It truly is a fertile land. Finding 4 undead essences was tantamount to having 4 excellent magic tools, and it only took him a bit over 10 minutes to get them. Lin Yun's time was already running out. The 3 abyssal magic diamonds making up the alchemy array could maintain the planar path for about half an hour. After dealing with those skeleton warriors, Lin Yun felt like he should head back, as he wanted to have a safety margin. He could only wait for next time if he wanted to do this again. Lin Yun didn't delay and put 4 undead essences into his pocket and started chanting the incantation to leave, but he suddenly saw a bright flash 100 meters away from him. Lin Yun's curiosity was immediately piqued. This was the Bone Plane, a world made of black soil and ghastly bones. It was definitely unusual for a light to flare out like that. Lin Yun immediately canceled the incantation to open the exit and sent a mage eye over, keeping it close to the black soil. Lin Yun became stupefied. Through the mage eye, Lin Yun could clearly see numerous skeleton warriors surrounding that flicker, hundreds of them at the very least. Numerous flaming eyes and a forest of bones. It gave them an even more ghastly feeling. And the thing that they were all surrounding was a vein of nether iron that was several hundred meters long. At first glance, it looked like a giant, hibernating black python emitting a dense aura of death. There was a layer of hazy fog covering it, which covered the bloody moonlight as well as Lin Yun's line of sight, to the point that even when he was only a few hundred meters away, Lin Yun hadn't seen the vein of nether iron. Up until now, when Lin Yun accidentally saw that bit of flickering light, leaving him completely shocked. A nether iron vein that was several hundred meters long and completely exposed to the surface. No one would believe it if word of this got out. Normally, a nether iron vein could only be found several dozen meters below the ground, and even then, there would only be a few pieces here and there. Lin Yun had never heard of a vein that was hundreds of meters long. This was too frightening. After all, magic weapons forged with nether iron would naturally have the death frost power. If one was put on the market, it would sell for tens of thousands of gold. Moreover, nether iron would often be accompanied by all kinds of precious magic gems. These magic gems were worth even more than the nether iron itself. The abyssal magic diamond was one of those. Such a long nether iron vein, it should be enough to gear up 10,000 people. After seeing everything through the mage eye, Lin Yun wasn't in a hurry to approach. He instead crept close to a rock and carefully concealed himself. There were a couple hundred skeleton warriors next to the iron vein. If he alarmed them, he wouldn't even know how he died. Not to mention the dormant bone devil, which definitely wouldn't be very hospitable. Pushing through directly was out of the question. Hundreds of skeleton warriors and a bone devil that could wake up at any time. He would need the strength of a high mage at the very least before fighting them, but he was just a 9th rank mage. Going in would simply be throwing his life away. But of course, it didn't mean that there was nothing he could do. Lin Yun hid behind the rock and thought about it while letting out another mage eye. But this time, after this mage, I flew near the nether iron vein. Lin Yun not only gave up control of it, but he also poured a large amount of mana into it, making that mage eye quite strange. It had definitely been separated from Lin Yun's direct control, but thanks to the support of the residual mana, it could stay there for a long time. Of course, this kind of existence didn't have much meaning, because Lin Yun could no longer look through the mage eye, as their connection had been severed. The mage eye floating above the nether iron mine was actually a target. Its only effect was to use its faint light for positioning. But this was exactly what Lin Yun needed. After planting the mage eye, Lin Yun got in front of the rock and started casting a long and tedious incantation. As his mana whirlpool rotated, a fireball left Lin Yun's hand and flew out. The fireball left a long, flaming trail as it flew several hundred meters forward before arriving above that vein of nether iron in a blink. At almost the same time, Lin Yun chanted a final word. A bang followed, echoing loudly, as the huge fireball exploded above the nether iron vein, creating a blazing inferno in the sky. In an instant, the area below turned into a sea of fire. The rain of fire fell onto the black soil. It felt as if a pan of oil had caught fire, and in a few moments, that sea of fire spread for 100 meters, waking all of the slumbering skeleton warriors. Their soul fires were throbbing blankly as they ran around through the inferno in complete confusion. This was the 9th rank spell, Fire Rain. Among the mage rank spells, it was only a bit inferior to Thunderstorm, but it was a lot more effective than Thunderstorm against the undead. The large group of skeleton warriors was just instinctively running around. So how could they manage to avoid this vast sea of fire? In a short time, dozens of skeletons fell, charred to cinders. If it had been earlier, Lin Yun would be feeling very happy. Burning up more than a dozen skeleton warriors meant that he would get several undead essences. But Lin Yun wasn't happy right now. He hadn't dared to use a spell like Fire Rain before, because he was worried that it would create too big of a commotion and lead to him being surrounded by the undead that were drawn to the ruckus. But Lin Yun couldn't hold off at this time. A vein of nether iron that was several hundred meters long. Even the most powerful forces at the peak of the magic civilization some 10,000 years later would covet. Let alone now. Putting aside whether Lin Yun could mine anything from it now, as long as he was able to take advantage of the chaos to grab some magic gems from a vein, it would be worth it. As for whether he would alarm a lot of skeleton warriors, or even the bone devil that was sleeping underground, Lin Yun no more cared about it. With such a shocking nether iron vein spread in front of him, if he didn't grab himself a souvenir, Lin Yun wouldn't be able to forgive himself. Even if it was only a magic gem, its value would be no less than 100,000 gold. That would push the development of the Gilded Rose to a whole new level, at the very least equal to how it had been back when the old butler was really busy taking care of it, half a year ago. It would be even better if he got a good one, like an abyssal magic diamond. If he had another abyssal magic diamond, Lin Yun would be able to transform that master rank alchemy array, letting him keep the planar path open for at least an hour at a time. Increasing the time he could stay in the bone plane by half an hour wouldn't just increase the amount of undead essence that he could gather. It meant that Lin Yun could expand his range of activities and head for the depths of the bone plane to hunt higher-level undeads and obtain all kinds of precious natural resources. All this was built upon the amount of time that he could remain here. Have to be fast. Casting the Mage Eye and the Fire Rain took him about 1 minute, but Lin Yun's remaining time in the bone plane was already lacking. Moreover, as that sea of fire frantically spread, Lin Yun could feel the earth under his feet trembling, and a deep roar could be heard from the depths of the black wasteland. Lin Yun guessed that the Bone Devil had most likely been roused by the commotion. He had to act before the Bone Devil appeared, or else he would have to face an opponent with power on the level of a high mage ahead of time. At the same time that the deep roar echoed, Lin Yun clung close to the rock. He didn't chant or cast any spells. He only urged his mana whirlpool and continuously moved it at extreme speed, constantly pushing it towards the limit. In a short 10 seconds, Lin Yun's mana was in a boiling state. Immediately after, the only thing that could be seen was a bright and fierce flame. Lin Yun's body burst into flame and instantly flew several hundred meters before reaching the center of the sea of fire. When a mage shattered their mana whirlpool, they would reach Great Mage Realm and gain the ability to completely fuse with their mana. Moreover, their power would increase tenfold, and they would be able to cast spells as they pleased. And most importantly, upon becoming a great mage, they could potentially grasp a frightening magical ability known as elemental incarnation. It would completely transform their body into a particular element, making them immune to almost all physical attacks and gaining the properties of the element that they embodied. But that powerful ability could only be sustained for a short time. Even a peak great mage would only be able to sustain it for a minute. And Lin Yun's time was much shorter. Lin Yun was still not a great mage right now, so what he was displaying wasn't a genuine elemental incarnation. That bright mass of fire had been created by using Lin Yun's mana control that transcended the limits of the era to forcibly imitate the mana circulation used during elemental incarnation. This would be practically impossible for anyone else of this time. This was a spell that surpassed the limits, and the duration of the spell would be even shorter than what an average great mage could sustain. Lin Yun estimated that he could last 10 seconds at most. If he couldn't accomplish everything within 10 seconds, then after the elemental incarnation disappeared, he would not only have to face a furious Bone Devil, but would also have to face the weakness that would ensue due to overdrafting his mana. Thus, when Lin Yun was about to reach the center of the Sea of Fire, he consecutively cast 5 flame bursts. The elemental incarnation came with instant fire system spells. Lin Yun cast these flame bursts one by one with no interruption in between. Only successive explosions could be heard echoing. A hole over a dozen meters long appeared in the nether iron vein. Pieces of ores carrying a faint, black light scattered around, and each of them was of high quality and could sell for several thousand gold coins. But Lin Yun didn't even look at them, instead pouncing on a few flickering lights. His speed while having elemental incarnation active was unfathomably high, and since Lin Yun was forcibly rotating his mana, he was even faster. A dazzling flame could be seen speeding through the sea of fire. The lights that had yet to fall had already been collected by Lin Yun. At the same time, the earth shook fiercely under his feet. It was followed by a deafening roar as a frightening, bony monster came out of the ground. It was 4 to 5 meters tall and was surrounded by countless faint phosphorescent lights, and in the center of its skull was a raging soul fire the size of a fist. Power strong enough to contend against that of a high mage was emitted, and the countless skeleton warriors within the sea of fire lowered their heads. Even if they were burnt to ashes in the inferno, none of the skeleton warriors dared to move. The chaotic scene instantly stabilized when the Bone Devil appeared. After settling the disturbance of the skeleton warriors, the Bone Devil let out another deep roar, and after a fierce mana fluctuation, a few brilliant beams shot out. The target was Lin Yun, who was grabbing those few flickering lights. The Bone Devil's dark fire bullet was something that even a high mage would be wary of. How could Lin Yun dare to take it head on even if he had elemental incarnation active? Just as the Bone Devil shot those spells, Lin Yun had already let off a flame flash. This time, the importance of the fire rain was shown. The sea of fire, which had already spread to several hundred meters, had already become Lin Yun's best escape tool. Lin Yun seemed like a fish in water as he used flame flash. Before the dark fire bullets had even arrived, Lin Yun had already used flame flash 3 times and escaped to the edge of the sea of fire. It was immediately followed by Lin Yun using the earlier incantation, making the planar path to No Scent appear once again. Lin Yun took 2 steps onto the planar path and looked back at the black wasteland from within the distorted space. The next trip here would be a month later at the very least. Proceeding along the path, Lin Yun stepped once more into No Scent. The 3 abyssal magic diamond became dark after exhausting their mana. They looked like 3 stones no longer had any of the radiance associated with abyssal magic diamonds. The basement had fallen into darkness once more. 3 is too few. Lin Yun shook his head. The amount of mana needed for a master rank alchemy array was huge. 3 abyssal magic diamonds could only be considered the lowest number that would work. Each time the mana was exhausted, the array would need at least a month to recover. In other words, Lin Yun would be able to enter the bone plane again after a month, but he would only be able to stay there for half an hour. Too annoying. 30 minutes really wasn't long enough for Lin Yun. This wasn't just a matter of profit. This related to Lin Yun's plan. If this matter could be settled, then Lin Yun might very possibly obtain an extraordinary magic tool. That's right, Heaven Rank Mage Bane's extraordinary magic tool, the Book of Death. He only needed time. 30 minutes was far from enough, and Lin Yun estimated that if he wanted to settle this matter, he would need at least 3 days. And that was if nothing at all went wrong, so he had to set aside 4 days to be safe. Such a long time definitely wasn't something that a small handful of abyssal magic diamonds could satisfy. Without hundreds of abyssal magic diamonds, it would be just a dream. The difference is too great. Lin Yun felt what was in his pocket. In addition to the 10 undead essences, there were 6 magic gems that he had snatched from the nether iron vein. The 10 undead essences were set aside by Lin Yun. The only use for those was to add them to magic weapons. Their price wouldn't change too much, so it would be appropriate to let the old butler deal with them. Then, Lin Yun took out the 6 magic gems one after the other. Lin Yun was already pleasantly surprised when he pulled out the first magic gem. This was a high-quality dark fire gem. It had the properties of fire and poison. It was typically used in embedding, whether it was on a weapon or a piece of jewelry. Once embedded, the dark fire gem would have shocking destructive power that didn't depend on the strength of the user. Even in the hands of a 3-year-old child, it could kill 10 strong, robust men like Jimmy. The price of the dark fire gem was definitely going to be very high, but the power within the dark fire gem was limited, and even a brilliant alchemist couldn't make it reach spiritual level. It seemed inferior to the abyssal magic diamond, but if these two were put on the market at the same time, the dark fire gem would ultimately get a higher price. This was a certainty. There was no requirement for the user, making it way too overpowered at lower levels. Every major family would spare nothing to nurture their own heirs. Mason of the Manchi family was a good example of that. In order to let him become a true mage, the Manchi family had spent several 100,000 gold. If they spent several 100,000 gold just to make him into a mage, how much would the Manchi family be willing to pay for an excellent magic tool that completely lacked usage requirements? After all, a mage wielding an excellent magic tool could face some weaker great mages. Good luck. Lin Yun smiled happily. With just this one dark fire gem, this trip could be considered a great success. Although it couldn't be used to improve the planar path, putting it on the market wasn't bad either. He should earn at least 500,000 gold from its sale, and that was a conservative estimate. Even if he used the profits to buy an abyssal magic diamond, it would leave him plenty of money. Lin Yun put the dark fire gem on the table and fished out 3 more magic gems from his pocket. But there wasn't any pleasant surprise this time. Despite them being magic gems of fairly high quality, there was still a huge gap compared to the price of the dark fire gem. The best of those was an elemental amber, which contained a very small amount of mana itself. But it still was one of the best mana vessels, and it could store a large amount of mana from external sources. It could even store a high mage spell. After thinking for a bit, Lin Yun put the other 2 magic gems with the dark fire gem and kept the elemental amber. Now it was time for the last magic gem. When Lin Yun put his hand back in his pocket, his expression suddenly changed. Lin Yun clearly felt that the last magic gem carried a bone-chilling feeling. Because the Bone Devil's power had been too great and Lin Yun needed to escape, he hadn't paid attention to what magic gems he had found. But now that he had returned to No Scent and checked his loot, Lin Yun finally noticed that this last thing in his pocket didn't seem to be a magic gem at all. But even if that wasn't a magic gem, it might be more precious than all the magic gems he had together. Sure enough, Lin Yun had a cautious expression as he took the object out from his pocket. It was the size of a dove's egg, a sparkling pure black, with a glimmer flashing from time to time. It carried a breathtaking power. Sure enough, it's the Frost Lich Heart. In the legends, it materialized after a lich's soul fire was extinguished. A lich was a frightening existence able to contend with a high mage, and its strength wasn't inferior to that of the bone dragon ruling the bone plane. Even if its soul fire was extinguished, it would still possess world-shaking power. Although Lin Yun had never seen a real Frost Lich Heart, the Frost Lich had been mentioned several times among the books of the Decaying Library. Even at the peak of the Magic Era, the Frost Lich Heart had its importance. Thus, there was no need to mention its importance in the current era. This Frost Lich Heart was worth at least 10 abyssal magic diamonds, and if used to maintain the planar path, Lin Yun would be able to stay at least 5 hours in the bone plane next time. He had won that gamble. Even if the elemental incarnation had exhausted all of Lin Yun's mana, even if the Bone Devil's dark fire bullet had almost hit Lin Yun, this didn't matter in front of the Frost Lich Heart. With his Frost Lich Heart, Lin Yun would be able to gradually nibble away at that nether iron vein. But before that, he had to advance to Great Mage. A 9th rank mage would seem very weak in front of a large amount of skeleton warriors, let alone the existence behind them, a Bone Devil that could contend against high mages. But to advance to become a Great Mage, Lin Yun would have to carry out his plan. After checking his loot, Lin Yun took another hour to transform that Master Rank Alchemy Array with the recently obtained Frost Lich Heart. After completing this task, Lin Yun put the magic gems and undead essences into his pocket and left the secret passage. Remy had already been walking around outside for a long time when Lin Yun walked out from the study. Remy brought 2 pieces of news, a bad one and a good one. The bad news was that Solon had rummaged through the Sage Tower and only found 3 of the materials needed for the mana baptism, meaning that Lin Yun still needed more than half of the 7 items required. The good news was that even if Solon didn't find the other 4 materials, he had given Lin Yun a place where he could find them, the Blackhorn auction house that had its events every 3 months. This matter had actually come up coincidentally. Solon had received an invitation to the Blackhorn auction house 2 days ago, and it had come with a list of articles that would be sold there. On were the 4 materials Lin Yun needed. The good news was really good, but the problem was that Lin Yun had no money he could immediately use. He truly had nothing at the moment. The Spectrum Potion had brought in 30,000 gold, but had already been invested in the Gilded Rose. Lin Yun had no more than 50 gold to his name. He hadn't been out for the past 2 months, so he hadn't thought about it. But now that he suddenly had 4 materials to buy, Lin Yun felt a bit put out to discover that he simply couldn't pay. What should I do? The old butler couldn't help. Although the business of the Gilded Rose was pretty good these past few months, since he wanted to thoroughly revive the flashing gold chamber of commerce, all the money earned was invested back to help the store grow more. The cheapest amongst the 4 was estimated at 5,000 gold, while the most expensive could even reach 30,000 gold, and that was just the starting price. If he was unlucky and met a foolish competitor that was overflowing with gold, Lin Yun might not even get it with 100,000. What if I sold the undead essences? But those few pieces of undead essences are worth 10,000 gold. What should I do if I don't have enough? Do I really have to sell the Dark Fire Gem? That should be used to raise the status of the Gilded Rose. Seems like I can only sell the 2 potions I refined. Lin Yun reached inside one of his pockets. Inside were 2 potions he had crafted a while ago. He had thought that he might use them in the Bone Plane if he met something dangerous, but he had ended up not needing them. He supposed that he could just sell them now. Lin Yun changed into his clean black gown and greeted the old butler before leaving for the Blackhorn Auction House. The Blackhorn Auction House was on the Victorious Return Main Street. It was 1,000 meters away from the Gilded Rose, which was on the other side of the main street, and it occupied a large swathe of the street. An astronomical amount of gold flowed in and out of this place every day. Since it had been set up in Thousand Sail City 50 years ago, the Blackhorn Auction House had always been rather low-key. It never participated in the struggles of Thousand Sail City and always kept a favorable attitude toward every force. At the same time, there was no force that would provoke the Blackhorn Auction House. Everyone knew that although the Blackhorn Auction House wasn't revealing its real strength, behind it stood the Blackhorn Chamber of Commerce, which could be considered a first-rate force in all of No Scent. As time passed, the Blackhorn Auction House became truly unconventional, keeping a good relationship with all the forces while also keeping them at a suitable distance, as if it lived outside of the social network of Thousand Sail City. But it was because of this unconventional attitude that the Blackhorn Auction House's business would get better day by day. 50 years ago, Thousand Sail City had many auction houses, but only the Blackhorn Auction House still was going strong after 50 years. Because it kept all forces equally distant, people didn't have to worry about being schemed against, even if they couldn't get any consideration. The various forces entangled in Thousand Sail City needed an absolutely neutral place like this. And that was the current Blackhorn Auction House. Now, Lin Yun was standing outside the Blackhorn Auction House. After explaining why he had come, someone quickly led him inside. The Blackhorn Auction House took up a whole section of a street, and sure enough, its interior was simply like a labyrinth. Lin Yun followed that person for about 10 minutes before arriving in a small reception room. The one receiving Lin Yun was a young man that looked a bit over 20. He was wearing a black gown with a little stain on the cuff. Lin Yun took a glance and thought, that must be Rainbow Sand Solution. He should be a fairly decent alchemist. Rainbow Sand was very expensive, so if an alchemist hadn't reached a certain level, he wouldn't dare to handle such an expensive material so rashly. But it seemed that this alchemist wasn't in a good mood. After seeing Lin Yun coming through the door, he slightly nodded, "Take a seat." Lin Yun scratched his nose and sat in front of the young alchemist. Just as he was about to explain why he had come, the young alchemist waved his hand and impatiently said, "Okay, you can leave me the potion you want to sell and leave. I'll appraise it and then sell it at its proper price. You can come and get your money in a few days." Lin Yun felt a bit uncomfortable with this. "I'm counting on these 2 potions to change my fate. How could I let you appraise them? Moreover, even if I was willing to let you appraise them, seeing how you handle Rainbow Sand Solution, do you even have the ability?" "I'm in no hurry." It could be seen from these words that Lin Yun was improving. If it was Lin Yun from a few months ago, he would have already tornado whipped this guy in the face. But the young alchemist clearly had no idea that he had narrowly avoided a calamity. After hearing Lin Yun's refusal, his face turned unsightly. "Are you afraid of me tricking you? Truly laughable. I have compounded more potions than you would ever see in your lifetime. How could your 2 potions be worthy of me scheming against you? I truly am in no hurry." Lin Yun took a deep breath and just repeated what he had said. "Good then." Seeing Lin Yun persist, the young alchemist could only nod angrily. "But I don't have much time. I still have an important experiment waiting for me, so I can only give you 3 minutes." Lin Yun smiled and put the 2 potions on the table. The 2 potions were green, and they carried a dense, irritating smell. After just one whiff, the young alchemist couldn't help frowning. 2 inferior healing potions, valued at 300 gold. It took only 30 seconds for the young alchemist to issue his appraisal. When he put the 2 potions back on the table, he muttered under his breath, "Trash." This time, Lin Yun didn't say anything and picked up the 2 potions as he turned to leave. "Such a joke. You appraised my ghost potion and my volcano potion as healing potions, and with an estimated value of only 300 gold. Do you think I'm a fool?" But just as Lin Yun was heading for the exit, the door to the reception room was pushed open from the other side. The person coming in was an old man. He was easily over 60, with wrinkles, white hair, and a white beard. He was wearing a wrinkled, gray gown and was panting as he came in, as if he had run the whole way over. "Did Mage Merlin come in?" "You are." Lin Yun stopped as he looked at the old man, feeling puzzled. Whether it was in his own memories or Maffa Merlin's memories, there was no memory of that person at all. Why did this person seem to recognize him? "You are Mage Merlin?" The old man looked at Lin Yun and immediately smiled cordially. "Welcome, Mage Merlin. Let me introduce myself. I am Khadgar, Blackhorn Auction House's chief appraiser." "Greetings." Lin Yun politely greeted him while pondering what he knew about this person. He had actually heard the name of Blackhorn Auction House's chief appraiser, Khadgar, quite a few times. He could even be considered a person worthy of being on the same level as Sage Towers Thorpe, as he was also a high mage and a great alchemist. But like the rest of the Blackhorn Auction House, he had always been low-key, to the point that many people knew of Thorpe, but not of Khadgar. "All right, I heard someone outside saying that Mage Merlin came today to have 2 potions taken care of. That originally was the case, but I just changed my plans." Khadgar looked at Lin Yun in surprise, and then he glanced at the young alchemist sitting on the other side of the table, considering their expressions and the circumstances. Could it be that Mage Merlin was offended by this fellow? Judging that this might be the case, Khadgar's expression grew unsightly as he looked at the young alchemist. This wasn't some minor matter. Last time, a bottle of Spectrum Potion was delivered to the Blackhorn Auction House, and even Master Wilhelm couldn't stop praising it, saying that this was the most imaginative potion he had ever seen and that some of the techniques used on it were simply unheard of. Before Master Wilhelm left Thousand Sail City, he kept reminding Khadgar that he absolutely had to find the alchemist who had compounded this potion. Although the Blackhorn Auction House hadn't been in contact with Lin Yun for the past few months, it had secretly been making countless investigations. After all, the Blackhorn Auction House was supported by a first-rate force, the Blackhorn Chamber of Commerce. Its formidable information-gathering abilities surpassed the other forces of Thousand Sail City by far. It could be said that as long as the Blackhorn Auction House wanted, anything happening in Thousand Sail City couldn't be hidden from them. This, of course, included information on the true alchemist behind the Spectra Potion. Naturally, the process of the investigation wasn't that simple, and this was with the Blackhorn Auction House putting large portions of their forces into the search, toward Loch Merlin, toward the Gilded Rose, toward the flashing Gold Chamber of Commerce, and toward all of the related clues. Everything had undergone a detailed investigation. Ultimately, they came to a shocking conclusion. That Spectrum Potion that received high praise from Master Wilhelm was most likely compounded by a young alchemist in his 20s. That young alchemist's name was Maffa Merlin. Khadgar was relatively proud of this conclusion. Compared to the Sage Tower, which was known to be the #1 power of Thousand Sail City, Even though they both got the spectrum potion at the same time, Solomon and his people still believed that a mysterious great alchemist stood behind this young mage, while the Blackhorn auction house chose to believe in the conclusions drawn by their investigators. Thinking of this, Khadgar smiled. After all, Mage Merlin even stayed in the Sage Tower's library for a very long time. During that time, the Sage Tower had many chances to get in touch with him, but unfortunately, these countless opportunities have been missed by the Sage Tower. Khadgar thought that Solomon was probably still having a headache, trying to figure out how to get in touch with the mysterious alchemist behind that young mage. But the current situation that he had just walked in on, what had happened while he was on his way? Don't worry, Mage Merlin, our Blackhorn auction house, sincerely wishes to cooperate with you. How about you listen to our offer first before making your decision? That's fine, let's talk about it. For someone of Khadgar's status to speak like this, he definitely meant his words, so Lin Yun wouldn't refuse him. Moreover, if it hadn't been for the young alchemist's trash talk, Lin Yun would indeed have sold the 2 potions in the Blackhorn auction house. Thus, due Khadgar's request, Lin Yun took the opportunity offered. As he listened to the discussion between the two of them, the lifeless young alchemist gulped with some difficulty. Ever since Khadgar appeared in the reception room, the young alchemist had suspected that he was dreaming. Otherwise, how could this situation be explained? This was too frightening. The chief appraiser of the Blackhorn auction house, Khadgar, was actually being so welcoming to a 20-year-old mage. That's right, very welcoming. The young alchemist had worked for 10 years in the Blackhorn auction house and had never seen Khadgar being so polite. Regardless of whether he was facing Solomon of the Sage Tower or Mon Shi of the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce, Khadgar had never been as polite as he was today. Who is this young mage? Thinking about it, the young alchemist couldn't help swallowing nervously again. At this time, his throat felt terribly dry, as if there was something stuck inside. After all, he hadn't really had a good attitude earlier, and he had muttered audibly that the 2 potions were trash. He couldn't have thought that something like this would ensue. On one hand, he truly was very busy and didn't have much time to spend here. And on the other hand, he disliked the attitude of this young mage, who had visibly shown that he felt uneasy with the interaction. Thus, when evaluating those 2 potions, he skimped on the work. Normally, nothing would come of it, but now the problem was far too grave. This was a person that even Chief Appraiser Khadgar was treating very politely, and he had recklessly offended him. He even felt like dying now, considering how much importance Khadgar was paying the 2 potions, even assuring that the Blackhorn auction house sincerely wanted to cooperate. What is this? From a young alchemist's understanding of Khadgar, how could he not understand what these words meant? Khadgar had already decided that he would spare nothing to get the 2 potions into the Blackhorn auction house's possession. With this realization, the young alchemist couldn't help becoming pale. But fortunately for him, neither Lin Yun nor Khadgar paid any attention to the deathly pale alchemist on the side. When Lin Yun changed his mind, Khadgar immediately felt happy. He hurried to explain his offer. Mage Merlin, I wonder if you've heard that the Blackhorn auction house holds an auction every 3 months? I have, of course, Lin Yun replied as he nodded. The Blackhorn auction was a grand occasion in the whole eastern part of the kingdom, and that was the reason that Lin Yun had come today. Then, Mage Merlin, if you are willing, I hope that you are willing to bring your 2 potions to the Blackhorn auction that will happen in a few hours. What do you think? Khadgar didn't brag much about the Blackhorn auction, and also didn't explain what kind of benefits such an auction would bring, because he believed that the young mage certainly wouldn't refuse such an offer. Even a great mage couldn't easily climb onto the stage of the Blackhorn auction. After all, it was a grand event of the whole eastern part of the kingdom. To be able to climb on that stage was like receiving the recognition of the entire East. Even a great alchemist wouldn't be able to resist such a temptation. Thus, Khadgar hadn't elaborated on his offer, only squinting his eyes to see the young mage's reaction. He hadn't expected that the originally relaxed Lin Yun would suddenly have an awkward expression after hearing the offer. Khadgar froze and didn't manage to react for a long time. He even wondered if his words hadn't been clear enough. In fact, let alone Khadgar, even the young alchemist, who had previously inwardly collapsed due to his previous interaction with Lin Yun, couldn't help cursing to himself. You are kidding. This is an event that is attended by the greatest powers of the whole eastern part of the kingdom. Any alchemist getting on that stage would have their social status increase 100-fold. Even if you aren't moved by the offer, how could it feel awkward to you? I'm very sorry. High Mage Khadgar, I think I won't be able to leave these 2 potions to the Blackhorn auction house. After Lin Yun said this, the reception room went dead silent. Khadgar still had his eyes narrowed, and no one knew what he was thinking. The young alchemist on the side was wide-eyed, looking at Lin Yun in disbelief as he wondered, how could someone refuse such an opportunity? He is crazy. At this time, the young alchemist truly wished to change places with this fellow. It would be so great if a potion that he had refined could appear in the Blackhorn auction. Because I need money immediately. There are 4 things that I fancy in the Blackhorn auction, so I would need money right now in order to compete for these things. Lin Yun decided to explain his reasoning since Khadgar had been so courteous with him, while Lin Yun had rejected him twice already, which could be considered quite impolite. When he heard Lin Yun's explanation, the squinting Khadgar suddenly smiled. Mage Merlin, this is an easy matter to deal with. I can appraise your 2 potions right away. However much they are initially valued at is how much credit we'll front you to use in the auction. Moreover, I can guarantee that their eventual price will exceed my estimation. That should be good. Lin Yun nodded and took out the 2 potions from his pocket. Khadgar glanced at them for a moment before an expression of amazement appeared on his face. He promptly grabbed the 2 potions and frowned as he carefully analyzed them. After a long time, he nodded gently as he turned back and asked uncertainly, Volcano potion? Indeed, a volcano potion. Lin Yun's calm answer made Khadgar hold his breath. My God! And the young alchemist who had wished to be in Lin Yun's shoes suddenly felt everything turning black around him when he heard those words. Volcano potion. It's actually a volcano potion. Even if no one paid attention to him, the young alchemist still subconsciously bowed. He was hoping for a hole to appear so he could jump inside. It was the rumored volcano potion that could make one's mana burst like a volcano and let a great mage break through the high mage boundary. It had appeared in front of him, and he had valued it at just 300 gold coins and treated it as trash. That potion was the mark of a great alchemist. Being able to compound a volcano potion meant that one was surely qualified to enter the ranks of the great alchemists. This young mage, he is a great alchemist. Someone that could stand shoulder to shoulder with Khadgar and Thorpe. The young alchemist was in disbelief. He had offended a great alchemist, and one that was only 20 years old. This potion, in contrast, Khadgar was a lot calmer. After the initial surprise, he had already recovered and was looking suspiciously at the other potion. Sorry, it might be due to my age, but I cannot recognize the other potion. This is a ghost potion. Lin Yun smiled. This time, Khadgar was stunned in silence. If the compounding of a volcano potion was the sign of a great alchemist, then the ghost potion was the sign of a pinnacle great alchemist. It was the potion that required skills closest to the master rank. For a great alchemist to be able to refine a ghost potion meant that he had already reached the summit of potioneering. As long as he had enough experience and time, he would be able to enter the master level at any time. Khadgar had studied potioneering for dozens of years and was now stuck in the great alchemist realm. He didn't know how long it would take for him to reach the master level. Even Master Wilhelm had been praising this young mage endlessly, despite not knowing who exactly the alchemist was at the time. When Khadgar had seen him present the volcano potion, he had thought that it was surely the pinnacle of this young alchemist's achievements. He never could have guessed that the second potion was actually the one that was closest to master level. The ghost potion. Originally, Khadgar had made a lot of preparations. How to appraise these 2 potions, how to convince the other side to cooperate with the Blackhorn auction house, how to lure this young mage with a boundless future, and so on. But when Khadgar realized that this was a ghost potion, he found out that all his preparations had been for nothing. That's right, absolutely nothing. Luring a great alchemist that could become a master anytime. Even if Khadgar was shameless, he couldn't say anything, let alone the Blackhorn auction house. Even the Blackhorn Chamber of Commerce behind him would have to send the higher-ups to negotiate with such a figure. As for persuasion or favors, there was no need to bring those up. In front of a future master alchemist, those little tricks had no meaning. Mage Merlin, Khadgar wanted to say something, but after starting his sentence, he found out that he didn't know what he should say at this point. You seem to have forgotten the appraisal. Hi, Mage Khadgar. Right. Appraisal. With Lin Yun's reminder, Khadgar recalled that he had promised to appraise the potions so that Lin Yun could use that money during the auction. But after studying the two potions for a long time, Khadgar awkwardly felt that the originally simple appraisal was incomparably difficult. Khadgar thought about it for a moment and clenched his teeth as he appeased. Mage Merlin, I feel embarrassed. I cannot help you appraise the exact value of these two potions. I can only let you know that if you are willing to cooperate with the Blackhorn auction house, we will use these two potions as the last lot of the auction. As for the bidding over the 4 materials you need in the auction, I'll guarantee on the behalf of the Blackhorn auction house that you'll obtain our full support. Even Lin Yun was shocked when he heard Khadgar's words. The Blackhorn auction house's full support. What kind of concept was that? It meant that as long as he was determined to have these 4 materials, he could use nearly unlimited funds. Good then. Thank you for your trust. These 2 potions shall be left in your hands. You are too polite. Originally, Khadgar only wanted to use this opportunity to rope in that young mage with boundless prospects, but he hadn't expected that this young mage would actually bring such nice surprises. At the same time, Khadgar didn't forget to remain polite and do his best to keep this young prodigy happy. A volcano potion and a ghost potion completely threw the original plans for the auction into chaos. Khadgar had to hurry up and amend the original arrangements before the auction started. The sudden appearance of the 2 potions would have amazing results. Then, Mage Merlin, I'll go off first. After Khadgar politely said a few more words, he hurriedly bade farewell. But before going out, he called out to that young alchemist. Fellow, help Mage Merlin. You must carefully take care of him. If you neglect to keep Mage Merlin satisfied, you can pack your things and return to Auckland. Yes. In fact, there was no need for Khadgar's warning. After seeing everything with his own eyes, Fellow had been frightened out of his wits. How could he dare slight Lin Yun now? Khadgar departed, leaving only Lin Yun and Fallow in the reception room. Lin Yun didn't make a fuss about his earlier actions, making Fallow feel a bit guilty. Up till now, Fallow still hadn't figured out how the situation had escalated to this point. It had originated from Fallow being busy and estimating that Lin Yun was only an apprentice alchemist due to his age, so he hadn't been very polite. In fact, Fallow would receive many such apprentice alchemists every day. They all had merely stepped onto the path of alchemy, yet they thought that was a good use of time to bring a few of their product to try their luck at the Blackhorn auction house. Most of the time, Fallow would make them leave their things behind and have them come back to get their money once their things sold. As for those that didn't sell, they would be put in a corner. If someone wanted to get them back, they would have to look for them there. This might seem a bit unfair, but he was just taking care of the most common case in the most efficient manner. But the Blackhorn auction house was so big, and there were so many deals happening every day that no one would pay attention to Fallow's actions. And those apprentice alchemists mostly came here to try their luck, so if it didn't sell, it didn't sell. It wasn't worth offending Fallow for it. Thus, for so many years, Fallow had never met any troubles from this. But his luck hadn't held out this time. It was as if he'd gotten up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Who would have thought that a 20-year-old mage would alarm Khadgar? Who would believe that the 2 potions he casually took out were the volcano potion and the ghost potion? Who could believe that? In any case, by this point, he could not believe it. When he thought of Khadgar's warning before leaving, Fallow felt his legs weaken. If he didn't take good care of Mage Merlin, he would have to pack up and return to Auckland. But his earlier actions had gone far beyond just neglecting him. Once his earlier behavior was mentioned to Khadgar, he really would be finished. His job, his future, everything would be over. Fallow thought about it and paled in dread. But Fallow had indeed been able to become an alchemist at such a young age, and he had the qualifications to work at a place like the Blackhorn Auction House. This definitely hadn't been due to just luck. Knowing how bad the situation was, the young alchemist immediately bit his lip and suddenly groveled under Lin Yun's feet. Mage Merlin, I made a mistake, a huge mistake. I failed to recognize your greatness. Lin Yun looked stunned, and his jaw almost dropped down. What kind of scene is this? Mage Merlin, I trust that you are a magnanimous person. Please let me off. I truly cannot afford to lose this job. Fellow went all in. He could lose his face, but he definitely couldn't lose this job. Moreover, no one but this great alchemist would see his pitiable state. And Fallow thought that even if someone else did see, he could just say that he was pleading a future master alchemist for leniency, and that they likely would never have an opportunity to even interact with one. Lin Yun was shocked for a long time. It would definitely be a lie to say that Lin Yun wasn't having some thoughts about this fellow. He had remained silent after Khadgar left to see what this young alchemist would say. But Lin Yun had guessed what would happen, but not that it would be to such an extent. That young alchemist was indeed bowing, but the way he bowed was truly unconventional. An alchemist in his 20s was hugging his thigh while weeping. Was he trying to reenact a scene from a play? Lin Yun took a deep breath and used the calmest voice he could bring out to say, "First, stand up." Fellow shamelessly wailed, "No, Mage Merlin, if you don't agree to let me off, I won't get up. Won't get up. Won't get up." Fallow shuddered. "Move. You don't need to act so pathetic. Didn't Khadgar ask you to take care of me and lead me to check out the auction?" "No, I can't." Fallow started to speak, but after seeing Lin Yun's expression, which didn't seem too angry or displeased, he promptly explained, "It's like this. Mage Merlin, the Blackhorn auction is only semi-open to the public. Only the VIPs who received an invitation can participate directly." Lin Yun froze when he heard that. There was such a thing with the Blackhorn auction. Before Lin Yun could finish, Fellow already carried a fawning smile as he said, "But it doesn't matter, Mage Merlin. You are High Mage Khadgar's guest. It is tantamount to being a VIP of the Blackhorn Auction House. I'll bring you to deal with the formalities, and you can take part in the auction after you are done with those." Not bad. After leaving the reception room, Fallow quickly helped Lin Yun with what he needed. During that time, Lin Yun got a whole new understanding of the young alchemist. He had to admit that this young alchemist truly was capable. He was able to handle matters quickly and efficiently, and he had reached the pinnacle at using others' reputations to settle problems. He relied on Khadgar's name to help Lin Yun cut through the red tape. When meeting some fool, Fallow would simply use the Khadgar move. "This is the chief appraiser's guest. What are you doing? You don't want to do it." It would make things difficult for the chief appraiser's guest. In this manner, they were able to breeze through the required procedures. In a short half an hour, Fallow brought Lin Yun an invitation letter to a luxurious private room. This was one of the auction house's best rooms, and there were only a total of 7 of these rooms. In the past, they were set aside for each major force's leader. Only the peak powers of the eastern side of the kingdom could have their own seat. In Thousand Sail City, only the Sage Tower Solomon and the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce's Manchi were able to have one of the 7 private rooms. Someone like Sasu of the Viper Nest could only sit on the outer floor. After they were done with the formalities, the two arrived at the site of the auction, the entire top floor of the Blackhorn Auction House. It was a huge place that could hold 1,000 people. When the two arrived, they could see many important guests sitting in the large area. Khadgar had just said that the Blackhorn auction was a huge event in the entire eastern part of the kingdom, and these weren't empty words. When Lin Yun looked in from the entrance, he found out that nearly all of Thousand Sail City's top figures had come. The Sage Tower Solomon, the Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce's Manchi, the Viper Nest Sasu, Silver Moon Mercenary Group Sasu, and others. The VIP boxes were on the 2nd floor, and they were the best seats in the entire auction floor. Fallow led the way, while Lin Yun followed, looking around in curiosity. The two of them quickly reached the last private room on the 1st floor. Just as they were about to go up, they were stopped by someone. "Hey, young Master Merlin, this isn't a place for you." The one who stopped the two young men was the butler of the Monchi family, Jonathan. He was in his 50s and had a short stature with grizzled hair. He was always blunt and unkind to people of lower status. But before Lin Yun even answered, Falo stepped forward. "Who are you? What are you trying to pull by blocking this path?" Falo certainly wasn't polite. The young alchemist originally wasn't a polite person. After all, before Khadgar arrived, he had been trash-talking Lin Yun. How could a mere butler be worth his attention? Moreover, Falo was still backed up by Khadgar. This was tantamount to representing the entire Blackhorn auction house, so he wouldn't have any problem being unscrupulous now. "I am the butler of the Monchi family, Jonathan. This is Master's box. How could you rush through this area as you please, disturbing my master's rest? Are you able to handle the consequences?" Jonathan wasn't easy to deal with either. In Thousand Sail City, the Monchi family definitely had great power. Besides holding the Sage Tower in high regards, it didn't attach much importance to the other forces, let alone two kids. Jonathan didn't think that he would meet someone even more unreasonable this time. This young fellow surprisingly didn't back down when facing the butler of the Monchis. Even more surprisingly, Falo stepped forward and slapped him. A loud sound echoed, and the surroundings went silent. Jonathan covered one of his cheeks while pointing at Falo with a trembling finger, his eyes filled with disbelief. He was the butler of the Monchi family, one of the most trusted subordinates of his master. Even the leaders of each major force in Thousand Sail City would be polite to him. Did this kid go crazy? "Yo, you dare slap me?" he forced out as he looked at Falo in consternation. "Why wouldn't I dare?" After Falo slapped him, he seemed as if he was up for more. "Creating trouble in the Blackhorn auction house. It seems to me that you don't want to live." To be honest, Jonathan really had bad luck. Normally, Jonathan should have been inside the box accompanying Monchi. As the trusted butler of the Monchi family, he definitely didn't need to stand outside the box as a guard. But somehow, Jonathan had noticed Lin Yun coming over. This was a happy coincidence. Lin Yun had previously humiliated Mason, and many people of the Monchi family, including Jonathan, knew about it. Seeing Lin Yun walking over, Jonathan suddenly felt like showing off in front of his two young masters. It seemed like an extremely good opportunity for him. His master had come in person today, and there were so many elite mercenaries guarding the family. Even if that Maffa Merlin was extremely bold, how could he dare stir up trouble here? As long as Maffa Merlin didn't dare to retaliate, he would be able to humiliate him and help young Master Mason get back at him. And later on, young Master Mason would definitely treat him favorably. He might even compliment him in front of Monchi himself. But ultimately, things didn't go quite as planned for Jonathan. Lin Yun indeed didn't do anything, because the one who made a move was Falo, and he didn't even ask any questions as he directly slapped Jonathan senseless. He didn't care if this old man was a butler of the Monchi family. All he had been worried about was atoning for his earlier crime and mending his relations with the future master alchemist. When Jonathan came over with such an attitude, after getting Khadgar's instructions, how could Falo pay any heed to a mere butler? He just went straight over and slapped him. "Mage Merlin, let's go and sit. Don't let this trivial matter ruin your mood." After bad-mouthing Jonathan, Falo's sneer was replaced with a smile. The speed at which his expression changed was rather shocking. "Sure, let's go." "You can't go. You definitely aren't allowed to go in." Hearing that the two wanted to enter, Jonathan immediately jumped up. "You still dare to act up after slapping me? Guards, capture these two for me." "Shut up." Just as Jonathan was calling out, the door of a box above opened, and Monchi himself came out. "Get inside. Don't embarrass me." After Monchi's words came out, the first floor was silent once again. Jonathan's animated voice suddenly came to a halt, and as he gave the two young men a hateful glance, he escaped into Monchi's box. "Sorry about that, President Monchi. I didn't control my strength," Falo shouted as Jonathan was climbing the stairs, making the ladder suddenly stagger and almost fall down. "Look at what you have done for me." After the box was closed, Monchi's expression was quite unsightly. "You provoked that Falo? He's a young alchemist that even Khadgar thinks highly of, and you made things difficult for him. Are you crazy? I'm not. Master, I only saw that kid of the Merlin family. Shut up. Are you done causing trouble for me? After berating Jonathan, Monchi couldn't help feeling puzzled. However, how could that Merlin kid stand together with Fallow? And it even seemed like they had a good relationship. They should have gotten acquainted by chance. Mason interjected on the side, fuming. That Mafa Merlin's luck is very good. It was the same last time in the Sage Tower. I don't know how he got into Solon's good books and had me kicked out of the library. Being born in the Monchi clan, the number of times Mason had publicly suffered a loss could be counted on his fingers. He didn't know why things had played out like that. First, he was kicked out from the Sage Tower's library, and when he went to look for trouble at the Gilded Rose, he was instead forced to eat a glass bottle. How could Mason be fine with this? Mason had constantly been looking for an opportunity to retaliate since he came back from the Gilded Rose. But he didn't expect that after his father and elder brother discussed it, they would forbid him from returning to the Gilded Rose. Since Lin Yun had shown up in the Blackhorn auction house today, Mason immediately started plotting his revenge. You still dare to mention the matter of the Sage Tower? Monchi looked at Mason unhappily, but he strangely didn't deny Mason's guess. Because Monchi himself felt that these two young men should have met by accident and ended up hitting it off for some reason, perhaps due to having the same hobby. In any case, they had met and formed a favorable relationship. Otherwise, Fallow wouldn't have stepped in to help Mafa Merlin, let alone stealthily preparing a special box for him. After all, these boxes were set aside for the leaders of the local major forces. Even if only a few came to this auction, they wouldn't casually let others use the unoccupied ones. If Khadgar found out, he would certainly reprimand and punish Fallow. For Fallow to take this risk was proof that the friendship between them was quite solid. But regardless of how good it was just a new friendship, so it wouldn't have too big of an influence. If not for his butler being involved, Monchi wouldn't even have spared a thought for the matter. After coming to this conclusion, Monchi decided to just leave this problem be. He only said to Jonathan, "You don't need to look so pitiful. Wait until the auction is over, and I'll seek out Khadgar. The butler of my Monchi family isn't someone that can be slapped on a whim." "Thank you, Master. Thank you." Jonathan promptly bowed and expressed his gratitude, his mind already crafting a plot. After the auction is over, if Master steps in personally, Khadgar most likely won't interfere. How should those two be humiliated? Well, there's still a lot of time to think about this. Jonathan definitely didn't know that there was another person in the neighboring box thinking about the same thing. That Jonathan is too daring. He dared to disrespect Mage Merlin. Just wait until the auction is over. I'll show him. As Fallow led Lin Yun to his seat while beaming, he kept the unlucky butler in mind. To Fallow, this was like an opportunity delivering itself to him. He had been worried that there was nothing he could do to curry favor with this future master alchemist. But then that Jonathan suddenly arrived with his high and mighty attitude. This really made Fallow not know what to say for a moment. It was so lucky. Moreover, he could also act overbearing by relying on Khadgar's reputation. Dealing with a small butler in the Blackhorn auction house was too easy. Such an easy way to curry favor with a future master alchemist. Was there something more profitable? This time, Fallow was already planning meticulously. He had to go all out to deal with Jonathan, so that he could show Mage Merlin how sincere and determined he was to make up for his previous mistake. Mage Merlin might be cheerful enough to pardon him for his past behavior and maybe even give him a few alchemy pointers. Those would be pointers from a master alchemist, which might even make him break through. Fallow became more and more cheerful. He simply wished that the auction could finish up so that he could deal with that Jonathan fellow next door. Okay, Fallow, focus on the auction first. While Fallow was wishing for the auction to already be over, Lin Yun was of a far different mindset. He still didn't have any of the 4 materials he needed for the mana baptism. Yes, of course. Focus on the auction first. Fallow was completely in character now. He didn't need Khadgar's instructions. The words of this future master alchemist were the law. If he said to focus on the auction, he would focus on the auction. While the two were chatting, the auction officially began. The auction was personally hosted by Khadgar. The first item to come up was a magic dagger from Audrock City. It was called Tornado Tooth. Tornado Tooth, the masterpiece of Audrock City's great alchemist Andre. 3 wind rocks were embedded in the weapon, forming a wind blessing. Not only can it raise the wielder's movement speed substantially, but it can also automatically fire a wind spell onto the 5th rank every minute. It is a rare, high-quality piece among excellent magic tools. The starting price is 5,000 gold, and the minimum bid increment is 500 gold. Khadgar was worthy of being the Blackhorn Auction's chief auctioneer. He only needed a few sentences to clearly introduce this excellent magic tool. 5,500 gold. As the first item of the auction, the price for the item was quite good, so just as Khadgar finished introducing the item, someone raised their paddle. 6,000 gold. 6,500. 7,500. Naturally, there were a few people who had their eyes on it, and in a short time, Tornado Tooth's price went over 10,000 gold before finally being bought by a rich and powerful person from Audrock City for 13,000 gold. He apparently had indicated that he intended to use it to pay respect to great alchemist Andre. After Tornado Tooth was won, Khadgar quickly auctioned 2 magic tools with fairly good quality. Even Lin Yun was slightly tempted by one of the items, but he managed to check himself. Magic tools were useless to the current Lin Yun. As long as he advanced to become a great mage, with that nether iron vein of several hundred meters, he could have countless excellent magic tools, and those excellent magic tools would have Lin Yun's name signed on them. But Lin Yun didn't have to wait for long. The 4th auctioned item soon appeared, and it was one of the 4 materials Lin Yun needed for the mana baptism, the Styx water. The next item is a bottle of water from the river Styx of Ghost City. There are many alchemists here, so I'm sure everyone is aware of the value of this bottle of Styx water. The starting price of the Styx water is 10,000, and the minimum bid increment is 1,000. 11,000 gold. 13,000. 14,000. 17,000 gold. Just as Khadgar finished speaking, voices echoed here and there in the audience. A bottle of Styx water with a starting price of 10,000 gold soon reached twice that amount. But Lin Yun wasn't anxious, because he noticed that after reaching 20,000, the price was increasing much more slowly. In other words, most people felt that this bottle was only worth about this much, so it would be unprofitable to chase the price much higher. In this era, Lin Yun was perhaps the only one who knew the true value of the Styx water. The current state of alchemy was far from being developed enough to unearth this reagent's true value. After all, mana baptisms wouldn't come to pass until 1,000 years later, let alone those even more powerful formulas. Lin Yun just waited for the bidding to die down. When the price reached 37,000 gold, the venue went silent. Most of the people who had participated in the bidding were shaking their heads, wearing smiles that carried a hint of ridicule. A bottle of Styx water reaching such a price. To them, this was already a foolish waste of money. Clearly, even if Styx water was rare, it didn't have a wide range of use in alchemy. There were no more than 10 kinds of potions that used Styx water, and most of them could use other materials as a substitute. To bid such a high price on a bottle of Styx water wasn't something a rational alchemist would do. 37,000 gold going once, going twice. 37,000 gold if there are no higher bids. 50,000 gold. Just as Khadgar was about to announce the deal, a voice came from a box on the 2nd floor. Lin Yun's bid of 50,000 gold made the originally quiet venue become rather lively. The people who had participated in the bidding for the item couldn't help turning to look at the box on the 2nd floor, wanting to see what the spendthrift looked like. Bidding 50,000 gold for a bottle of Styx water, this already surpassed something that could be described as foolish. After all, Tornado Tooth, an excellent magic tool, was only able to go a bit over 10,000 gold. So that bottle of Styx water was worth a few Tornado Tooths. Why waste your money like that? Unfortunately, no one was able to see who it was. The one who walked out of the box was actually Fallow of the Blackhorn Auction House. It's that Merlin kid. Out of all the people in the venue, only those in the box of the Monchi family knew who that profligate spender was. How could he have so much money? Monchi frowned. There was nothing wrong with the bottle of Styx water, but the appearance of 50,000 gold was a huge variable. Even in the Manchi family, only 2 or 3 people knew that Manchi had been targeting the house left behind by Lochmerlin. At first, after Lochmerlin's shipwreck, Manchi felt that getting that house should be easy, so he looked for Fario and used the 8,000 gold promised in the contract in his hands to drive Maffa Merlin out of there. But unexpectedly, just as he was about to get hold of the house, Maffa Merlin became a mage out of nowhere and had the necessary gold, making Manchi lose his chance. Manchi didn't lose hope, though, and he went to look for Sasu. For the Viper Nest to be able to rise to the top in just over a decade and sit on the throne of the underground forces, this was inevitably linked to the support of the Manchi family. This was an open secret among the major forces of Thousand Sails City. With Manchi's incentives, Sasu sent a 9th rank mage. Normally, sending a 9th rank mage to deal with a young fellow who had recently been a mere apprentice and a butler who was getting old will be making a big fuss over nothing. But ultimately, that 9th rank mage was defeated, and the few dozen subordinates had been scared silly. A few days after returning to the Viper Nest, they found an excuse to leave Thousand Sails City and hadn't appeared again ever since. But even these 2 failures only made Manchi frown a bit, as he still didn't put much stock in that Maffa Merlin. In Manchi's eyes, he was a young mage with no background and no power. How could he defeat a 9th rank mage? In the entire Thousand Sails City, the only person that could decide everything through strength was Solomon. Even if others were powerful, they couldn't rely on their personal power to contend against the Manchi family. The 50,000 gold today, though, this made Manchi feel a bit worried. Although the amount itself wasn't much, this was a variable that he didn't know about, because Manchi couldn't figure out where this gold had come from. Who gave this gold to Maffa Merlin? Could there be another force looking into that house? If that's the case, that will make the matter very troublesome. The Black Tower wanted ownership of that house. If he couldn't manage that matter properly, the entire Manchi family would be in trouble. Who leaked the news? Manchi wondered, considering the possibilities. It might be Fallot lending him some money. That Merlin kid has always been lucky. Last time in the Sage Tower, he relied on Solon. And this time in the Blackhorn auction, he is using his relationship with Fallot. I'll have a look and see whether he'll still have Fallot behind him after leaving the Blackhorn auction. That glass bottle in the Gilded Rose was the stain on Mason's life. Although he was still in the auction, his thoughts weren't there anymore. Mason's mind was filled with thoughts of tormenting and humiliating that wretch, and he kept muttering under his breath. Shut up. Manchi glanced unhappily at his son. It would be great if it was this simple. Fallot's status in the Blackhorn auction house wasn't low, but such an amount of gold wasn't something that he could easily take out. But Manchi knew that reasoning with Mason was useless now. The kid was completely fixated on getting revenge, so how could he listen to something else right now? Thinking of this, Manchi urged him, "Oh, right, I have to let you know. I don't care if you want to deal with that kid, but the conflict with the Sage Tower and Solon last time already left the family in a bad situation. If you cause trouble this time, then don't even think of leaving the house afterwards." Okay, I got it. While this father-son pair was talking, Fallot had already carried that bottle of Styx water back to the box. Mage Merlin, is this really worth so much gold? After Fallot gave the Styx water to Lin Yun, he couldn't help asking after hesitating for a long time. This was someone that was destined to become a master alchemist. If it had been anyone else that used so much money to buy a bottle of Styx water, Fallot would have already mocked them. Wasn't this a complete waste? How could Styx water be worth so much? Even new alchemists would be clear about it. Spending 50,000 gold to buy a bottle of Styx water was truly foolish. But that bottle of Styx water was bought by Lin Yun, so Fallot didn't dare comment. As a future master alchemist, this young man's insight and experience was something he couldn't compare with. Even Khadgar wasn't on that level. There was definitely a reason for him to buy a bottle of Styx water. He couldn't understand only because he didn't have enough experience and insight. Indeed, Lin Yun opened the lid of the bottle. It was very pure Styx water, even better than he had imagined. At the peak of the magic era, such a bottle could easily be exchanged for a dozen abyssal magic diamonds. Only paying 50,000 gold for such a precious material. Lin Yun couldn't help feeling great about it. And the auction house had guaranteed that it would let him pay any price for the items he wanted anyways. Facing Fallow's question, he even said a few more things. Wait until the auction is over and try replacing troll blood with Styx water when compounding an abyss potion. It should increase the quality. Thank you, Mage Merlin. Thank you very much. Fallow froze before a pleasant expression appeared on his face. It came. Advice from a future master alchemist. I wasn't wrong. As long as I acknowledge my mistake and show that I'm completely sincere, someone of such lofty stature wouldn't hold a grudge. And not only did he let the matter of my past slights drop, but he even gave me a pointer. This was the pointer of a future master alchemist. Thinking of this, Fallow was so excited that he didn't know what to say. He repeatedly expressed his thanks while feeling bewildered. After some time, he fished out a slip of paper from his pocket and recorded Mage Merlin's suggestion. Lin Yun smiled before focusing his attention back on the auction. As for Fallow's scribbling, Lin Yun didn't need to look at it. In fact, using Styx water to replace troll blood when compounding the abyss potion wouldn't make its quality just a bit better. It would increase the quality by several times, giving the abyss potion a qualitative change. Moreover, this was just a superficial use of Styx water. Styx water's true value far surpassed 50,000 gold. Lin Yun estimated that if he used it sparingly, that bottle of Styx water would be enough to compound 10 potions on the same level as the ghost potion once he used what he needed for the mana baptism. The auction was still ongoing, and although Lin Yun's extravagant expenditure led to a few heated debates, most people only considered it a funny topic, and once they were done jeering about it, they put out of their minds. After all, those who had participated in the auction of the Styx water weren't planning to get it at all costs. It would be good if they could get it at a low cost, but not getting it wouldn't result in a loss. Getting a funny joke for free was good too. Afterwards, 2 more items were auctioned, and with Khadgar overseeing the auction, they sold at a decent price. The next auction item is a badly damaged spell. Khadgar's introduction puzzled many people. Magic had developed for so many years. The inheritance of spells had already been refined thoroughly, so there would very rarely be a badly damaged spell. And if a spell really was so badly damaged, the value of the incantation would be 0, even if it had shocking might. As long as one character was lacking, it meant that the spell was already a piece of scrap. Regardless of how powerful a mage was, one couldn't use an incomplete incantation to cast a spell, let alone reproduce the power of the proper spell. So why did Khadgar take out this badly damaged spell? I believe that everyone present has heard the name of this spell before. The Third Era's last Heaven rank mage, Rudolph, once used this spell to destroy an entire army of demons. That's right, this spell is Hell Destroyer. Khadgar had just finished speaking when the entire venue suddenly became quiet. This strange silence stretched on interminably, before finally bursting into a huge commotion. Hell Destroyer. Did I mishear? Is it really Hell Destroyer? Hell Destroyer was rumored to be the spell created by the last Heaven mage of the Third Dynasty when faced with an army of demons. This spell was referred to as the only extraordinary spell. In that era, it nearly overturned the ideas of the entire magic system. But after the Third Dynasty, that spell had completely disappeared. Rudolph fell at the end of the battle, and the inner workings of the only extraordinary spell were buried along with him. After over 1,000 years, even with countless mages working hard at it, they weren't able to reconstruct this extremely powerful spell. No one could have thought that it would appear today in the Blackhorn auction. Indeed, the extraordinary spell was already badly damaged, and like it was mentioned before, no matter how powerful a mage was, they wouldn't be able to rely on this incomplete incantation to cast the spell. But this didn't matter to everyone present. Even a complete version of Hell Destroyer, an extraordinary spell, wasn't something that ordinary people could grasp. What was important was the knowledge that could be contained within. That was the legacy left behind by a Heaven mage. Even one simple character would contain countless secrets. The bidding for this badly damaged Hell Destroyer spell will start at 50,000 gold. The minimum bid increment is 5,000 gold. The starting price was set at the same amount that Lin Yun had paid for the bottle of Styx water, but the only difference was that Lin Yun had been ridiculed by the entire venue for his purchase, while the auction of the Hell Destroyer spell immediately set off a wave of bids. 60,000 gold, 70,000, 100,000. Less than a minute passed, and the current bid for the damaged incantation had already reached 100,000 gold. And it seemed that this was just the beginning. That price was quickly overtaken by the following bids, and by the time it reached 250,000, it suddenly stopped, letting people gasp for breath. But it was followed by another round of competition. Crazy bids were announced one after the other. A damaged incantation somehow managed to reach the incredible price of 500,000 gold. What kind of concept was that much gold? When Loch Merlin opened the Gilded Rose on the Victorious Return Main Street, from buying magic materials to hiring an alchemist, it cost him a total of 100,000 gold. In other words, Hell Destroyer's damaged incantation was currently worth 5 of Loch Merlin's fledgling business. The mages in the venue were practically going crazy over this badly damaged incantation. There were more than 100 mages, a few dozen great mages, and even a few high mages in attendance at this Blackhorn auction. Their thirst for the Hell Destroyer was something that those unacquainted with magic couldn't understand. This was the legacy of a heaven mage, an unfathomable treasure to every mage. Among all those mages, Lin Yun was probably the only one that wasn't moved. To him, the value of the Hell Destroyer spell was really small. There were no fewer than 10 spells in his mind with the same power, and they were all complete. Lin Yun's problem right now wasn't mastering these spells, but rather reaching a high enough rank to cast them. In other words, the 4 materials for the mana baptism were a lot more valuable than the Hell Destroyer, at least to Lin Yun. Thus, Lin Yun was completely at ease as he watched the play, with all these people fighting over items and spending their money so that they wouldn't be able to compete with him over the remaining 3 materials that he wanted. And the numerous mages at the auction didn't fail to live up to Lin Yun's expectations. The previous bid of 500,000 gold only managed to shock the venue for a short moment before a voice came out from one of the boxes. 600,000 gold. This was the bid of the Sage Tower. Solomon, who had been silent for a long time, finally made his bid. The venue became silent once more after this bid was announced, and it lasted a lot longer than the previous time. This was already an extremely high price, not to mention that the one who bid was Solomon. The 3 big shots of the Sage Tower were already considered legends in the kingdom. Even major forces couldn't neglect those 3 high mages. When Solomon declared his bid, some of the mages who had wanted a bid had to reconsider. Of course, not all the mages would think twice about bidding against him. 650,000 gold. Another voice came out from another box, raising the price of the Hell Destroyer incantation by another bump. Furthermore, after announcing the bid, that voice added with a hint of provocation, "I'm really sorry, Solomon. Our Ash Tower is also interested in the Hell Destroyer incantation." A fierce cough came out as an answer, as well as an even higher bid. 700,000. 800,000. Perhaps it was in order to keep provoking Solomon, or perhaps because he was irritated by the attitude of his counterpart. The mage from the Ash Tower instantly raised the price yet again right after Solomon bid. A short silence came over the box of the Sage Tower before Solomon called a new bid, 830,000 gold. But the mage from the Ash Tower quickly raised the stakes. 900,000. A violent cough came out from the Sage Tower's box, but no new bid appeared. Lin Yun couldn't help shaking his head when seeing this scene. It seemed that this badly damaged Hell Destroyer incantation would end up in the hands of the Ash Tower. Although the Sage Tower stood at the peak of Thousand Sail City, they weren't as prosperous as some people would assume on the financial side. A large number of mages would need financing for their many experiments and other expenditures, so suddenly taking out 1,000,000 wasn't that easy. But that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The price was truly already too high. It would be fine if they were bidding on a complete incantation, but this incantation was obviously badly damaged. Even if he managed to reproduce the spell, It would never possess the might of that time. The only thing it would do now was to allow one to take a glimpse into the wisdom of a heaven mage. And considering his resources, Lin Yun felt that this really wasn't worth it. Wait, what's that? Just as Lin Yun shook his head, something about the badly damaged scroll caught his eye, and he felt a jolt of shock. The mana fluctuations emitted by that scroll seemed a bit abnormal. Lin Yun frowned as he thought about this. He stared at the incantation scroll, studying it. The first thing that Lin Yun noticed was the trace of a burn at the bottom of the scroll. That should be the real cause of the damage. At the same time, Lin Yun noticed that after a millennium of wear and tear, the characters on the scroll were still incomparably clear, without the slightest trace of becoming blurry. Based on this, Lin Yun was sure of one thing. That scroll had definitely been written with eternal ink, because only eternal ink could resist the corrosion of time to this extent. Regardless of how many years passed, the characters wouldn't change. But the mana fluctuations of eternal ink definitely didn't look like that. The scroll itself didn't have any magical power, and the mana fluctuations were extremely weak. An ordinary mage wouldn't be able to notice those minute differences. But Lin Yun was different. He had read so many books written in eternal ink in the decaying library, as what other books would be able to survive the ravages of time. The unique mana fluctuation was already deeply engraved in his mind. So once he focused on the scroll, it took but an instant for him to notice that this wasn't actually the mana fluctuation of eternal ink. But if it wasn't the mana fluctuations of eternal ink, what was it? These mana fluctuations were very special, giving him a feeling of liveliness. And Lin Yun had only ever seen these kinds of mana fluctuations on a spiritual magic tool. Oh right, a spiritual magic tool. This time, Lin Yun didn't dare to neglect it as he chanted in a low voice, secretly casting Detect Life. That's right, there was a faint aura of life in the surroundings of the scroll. Although it was a bit weak, that kind of lively feeling couldn't be kept hidden from someone that suspected it was there. Lin Yun was 100% sure that this scroll had a spiritual aura, but it wasn't actually a spiritual magic tool. Rather, it should be a rumored spiritual augment. Spiritual augments were similar to spiritual magic tools, as both had spirituality. But the difference was that a spiritual magic tool's spirituality was bestowed by the alchemist. From the day of its creation, it was already finalized, stable, and powerful. But it wouldn't grow. A spiritual augment was completely different. Its spirituality couldn't exist by itself. It would have to attach to another magic tool, and the stronger the magic tool, the faster it would grow. There have been several famous spiritual augments in nascence history, and when they grew to their limits, their power was not inferior to that of an extraordinary magic tool. Just by itself, a spiritual magic tool was more useful than a spiritual augment, since after all, a spiritual magic tool had the fighting strength of a high mage, while a spiritual augment could even be considered useless if it was not attached to a magic tool. But once a spiritual augment was added to a sufficiently powerful magic tool, this would be reversed. Especially after the spiritual augment completely matured, the two couldn't even be compared anymore. This was why a spiritual augment with no inherent fighting power was still far more valuable than a spiritual magic tool with the strength of a high mage. When Lin Yun realized that the item in front of his eyes was actually a spiritual augment, eagerness filled his face. "Fellow," he called out, after thinking for a short moment. Fellow had been using this time to theorize on how the revised formula of the Abyss Potion would work. So far, assuming that his lines of thought were valid, the resulting improvements could only be described as crazy because the quality would increase by several times. This kind of potion couldn't even be called an Abyss Potion anymore. Faced with this incredible outcome, Fellow was stunned. He had been leaning on the table and staring at the papers filled with all kinds of formulas, rechecking them over and over to see whether he had made a mistake. Second check, no mistakes. Third check, no mistakes. Ninth, 10th, he still didn't find any mistakes. In other words, the outcome of his calculations should definitely be true. The moment he put down those papers, Fallow felt as if a door to a whole new world had been opened in front of him. Such great happiness was something that only a true alchemist could understand, researching day after day, experimenting year after year, not being able to take one more step forward in one's alchemy for a long time, when suddenly that last step would be easily bridged. That sudden happiness even made Fallow wonder whether or not he was in a dream. Fallow. Lin Yun called him twice without getting a reaction, and thus raised his voice impatiently. Yes, yes, Mage Merlin, what can I do for you? When he noticed Lin Yun calling him with a raised voice, Fallow was woken from his dream, and he looked at Lin Yun once more. Apart from the bit of remaining dread in his eyes, there was only yearning and worship. That was yearning for knowledge and worship of wisdom. Go to the Sage Tower box on my behalf, and let High Mage Solomon know that I can help him pay for half of this Hell Destroyer scroll, and after winning it, the Sage Tower can have it for a month first. During that month, the Sage Tower can copy the scroll and research the incantation as they wish, as long as they don't destroy the scroll. And for providing half of the funds to buy it, I will get to keep it permanently after that month. Yes, I will take care of this. If it had been in the past, Fallow would still question whether Solomon would accept such unfair conditions. But after checking the theory behind the revised version of the Abyss Potion, Fallow wouldn't do something so stupid. He would have to be crazy to question such a talented future master alchemist. After Fallow left, Lin Yun remained standing as he eyed the scroll on stage while thinking about the bone plane. The extraordinary Book of Death that Bane used most likely came from the bone plane, because an extraordinary magic tool like the Book of Death could only be born in a place like that black wasteland, which was shrouded in death. If everything went smoothly, he had planned to expand toward the depths of the bone plane after he grasped that nether iron vein. At that time, the flashing gold chamber of commerce should have recovered some strength, giving him the power and resources needed to organize a planar expedition. As long as he had the strength to survive in the bone plane, he would be able to find a way to locate the rumored shortcut and get the Book of Death that had once belonged to Bane. With the Book of Death and a spiritual augment, let alone a high mage, even an archmage would have to turn back if he opposed them. While Lin Yun was immersed in the thoughts of his plans for the future, the box door opened once again. This time, Fallow was accompanied by Solon. When he discovered that the owner of the box was actually Lin Yun, Solon clearly froze for a moment. But he quickly smiled cordially and greeted, "I didn't expect it to be you, Mage Merlin. Teacher Solomon would like to invite you to sit with him. Are you free?" Of course, it would be my honor. When he saw that Solon had entered, Lin Yun was smiling because he knew that the spiritual augment was likely already in his hands. When the group of three entered the Sage Tower box, Lin Yun found that this time, only Solomon of the Sage Tower's Big Three had come to the auction. The old man was thin and emaciated. He was sitting in a corner of the box, his thin body somewhat twisted as he burst into a coughing fit from time to time. No matter how one looked at it, he was an old man with one foot in the grave. If not for his reputation, who would know that this was the person who had stood at the peak of Thousand Sail City for over 20 years and held back numerous forces? "Hello, High Mage Solomon." Lin Yun greeted him courteously, but he couldn't help frowning slightly. The High Mage seemed even less healthy than the Sage Tower was suggesting to the public. That violent cough was clearly a sign of mana collapse, as each of his coughs was letting out an unstable mana fluctuation. In this era, there was no solution for mana collapse. For any mage, once they suffered a mana collapse, it meant that their life's efforts had come to an end. For Solomon to still manage to keep his power as a high mage despite the mana collapse could only be described as a miracle. But that miracle was probably coming to an end. Lin Yun estimated that this high mage who had shaken Thousand Sail City for over 20 years would only live another 5 years at most. From his cough, Lin Yun could guess that the berserk mana was already destroying his internal organs. Maybe 3 years, maybe 5. But all that was certain was that this powerful high mage didn't have long to live. In fact, his grooming of Solon to become the next leader these past few years was already a sign. Mage Merlin's insight is much better than I imagined. Solomon was sitting in the corner and did not get up to welcome him. This was quite normal based on his age, as there were few people older than him in all of Thousand Sail City. But when he saw Lin Yun's slight frown, he nodded in understanding, because Solomon knew that this young mage had already seen it. "You are overpraising me," Lin Yun modestly answered. He didn't exchange too much pleasantry as he was led to his seat by Solon, and he directly went to the core of the matter. "I wonder whether High Mage Solomon has considered my proposal. I have two questions." Solomon displayed two bony fingers while looking at Lin Yun with a faint smile. "First, several 100,000 gold isn't a small amount. The current flashing gold chamber of commerce doesn't seem to be able to come up with this amount. Second, if the Sage Tower also pays for half, why can't the scroll remain with the Sage Tower?" Before replying to your first question, I need to introduce Alchemist Fallow to you. Lin Yun called Fallow over and said, "Alchemist Fallow of the Blackhorn Auction House. I believe he can give you a satisfactory answer to your first question." "Indeed, High Mage Solomon, I can guarantee that in this auction, Mage Merlin obtained the Blackhorn Auction House's full support. He can win any item he wants." Khadgar's insight is pretty good. After Solomon heard this, he only shook his head with a smile, not inquiring further about it. "As for your second question," Lin Yun stopped here and glanced outside the box, before cryptically continuing, "I think it's mostly because you dislike the Ash Tower more than I do." Haha. This answer made Solomon stare at Lin Yun for a long time, and when he saw that Lin Yun was unwavering, the old man stood up and extended his withered right hand. "In that case, Mage Merlin, I wish us a pleasant cooperation." To a pleasant cooperation. After Lin Yun reached an agreement with the Sage Tower, the auction suddenly reached its climax. Upon hearing Lin Yun's offer, Solomon had continued to place some spaced-out bids to keep the auction going because he really didn't want to lose to the Ash Tower, even though they had ridiculed him for having such lousy bid increments. Sage Tower, Ash Tower, these two major forces fought over the Hell Destroyer spell, and the bid reached 1,300,000 gold. This price made everyone wonder whether these two forces were going crazy. This was the highest price reached in all the auctions so far. Paying such a shocking amount for a badly damaged incantation. Was it really worth it? 1,400,000 gold. When Solomon suddenly raised the price by 100,000 again, the entire venue was shrouded in silence. Apart from a cold snort from the Ash Tower's box, no other bid came out. After waiting a few moments, Khadgar slowly asked if there were any higher bids 3 times before the badly damaged incantation was awarded to High Mage Solomon of the Sage Tower. Thus, Lin Yun would have to pay 700,000 gold for the scroll. The scroll was quickly brought to Solomon's box, and after Lin Yun glanced at it, he passed it to Solomon. For Lin Yun, the incomplete incantation inscribed on it was insignificant. The important part was the scroll itself. In any case, the scroll would be his 1 month hence, so it didn't matter whether he had time to inspect it now. After winning the Hell Destroyer incantation, Lin Yun had been intending to take his leave, but he hadn't expected that this high mage who always remained alone would actually urge him so resolutely to stay. Lin Yun thought it would be rather awkward to insist on leaving in this situation, so ultimately he had no choice but to stay. The next several items auctioned weren't any of the materials that Lin Yun needed, and Solomon's attention didn't seem to be on the auction at all. The two began an idle chat, and the subject matter quickly turned to magic. Normally, a mage and a high mage wouldn't have much in common, since the difference between their realms was too wide. But on one hand, Lin Yun wasn't an ordinary mage, and on the other hand, Solomon deliberately showed consideration. Even if he spontaneously brought up a topic, it would be mostly within the realm of what mages would know about, and even if it was occasionally in the great mage realm, he wouldn't go too far or dwell on it. Both of them had very deep knowledge of magic, and the discussion was very interesting and harmonious. But unfortunately, this harmonious conversation didn't continue for long, because an uninvited guest arrived at the box. "High Mage Solomon, I am Mason of the Monchi family. Could you do me the honor of allowing me inside?" Mason stood at the door of the box, fixing his appearance while taking a deep breath. Mason, who wasn't seen in a good light in the Monchi family these days, finally got the opportunity to represent his whole family. It was easy to imagine what kind of mood he was in. While standing in front of the door, Mason was thinking that he had to make a proper performance and let Solomon see his outstanding magical talent. And if the revered high mage was in a cheerful mood, he might even decide to give him a few pointers. He had to make a proper impression to let his father, his older brother, and everyone in Thousand Sail City know that the Manchi clan didn't only have Ryan to represent them. Come in. Solomon helplessly shook his head and smiled apologetically to Lin Yun. Greetings, High Mage Solomon. I am here on behalf of my father. Mason entered the box with a dignified expression, but just as he was about to repeat the words told to him by his father, he realized that there were two unexpected people here. Fellow and Mafa. Such good luck. Mason was pleasantly surprised to see the brat here. He had been still thinking of waiting for the auction to be over before dealing with that annoyance. He never thought that his luck would be so good that he would find him in Solomon's box before the auction was even halfway through. Solomon's box isn't a place that just anyone can enter as they please. Even I was warned repeatedly by father to be polite and respectful. Yet this Mafa Merlin dared to appear here. How arrogant is he? Mason thought. That's right, that guy definitely heard that High Mage Solomon was here. So he came over to try his luck and see whether High Mage Solomon would take pity on him and give him the opportunity to learn in the Sage Tower. A trick like this won't escape my notice. Mason was rather proud of how well he had learned to detect intrigue. But this is good. I was worried about not finding you, but you actually delivered yourself to me and even gave me the opportunity to show my intelligence and wisdom before High Mage Solomon. Mason took a deep breath and calmed his mood before pointing his finger at Lin Yun and chastising with an expression full of righteousness. Mafa Merlin, what are you doing here? Why aren't you hurrying out? Is this a place you can be in? Can you afford to bother High Mage Solomon's rest? As Mason's words trailed off, the box became silent. Lin Yun and Solomon didn't react at all, but the look that fellow had as he stared at Mason. He was completely dumbstruck. What is he even talking about? Is the second son of the Manchi family completely brainless or what? Does he not know that the person he is pointing at is a future master alchemist? This is a person that Khadgar personally welcomed and treated politely. To point at him so carelessly and say something like that, he doesn't want to keep his hand, right? His attitude could hardly be further from how it had been when he first met Lin Yun. Moreover, asking if this is a place he can be in, damn, if it wasn't for Solomon urging Merlin to stay, we would have already gone back to our box. No wonder half of Manchi's hair already turned white before he turned 50. It was all due to this idiot's son. Truly pathetic. If I had such a stupid son, I would be so ashamed to have to admit our relationship. What? Still not getting out? Mason didn't seem to notice anyone else's reactions. As he stood there, righteously calling Mafa out, everyone looked at him in silence. He felt that his aura was very mighty at this moment, making him feel quite pleased. I'm telling you, you'd better get out immediately. Don't say I'm not giving you any respect. Wait until someone throws you out, and you'll understand what it's like to feel really pathetic. That's enough, Mason. Seeing that this guy was getting more and more unreasonable, Solomon, who had been enjoying the scene, ultimately put a stop to it. After coughing a few times, he explained, Mage Merlin is my guest. You said what your father sent you over for, right? Yeah. Mason was suddenly stunned when he heard that. What kind of situation was this? Why was it different from what he expected? He didn't even get to accomplish his task, and he had already been dismissed. When did that Mafa Merlin become High Mage Solomon's guest? Did High Mage Solomon pity him and deliberately give him a way out? This won't do. I finally got a chance. I can't let him trick High Mage Solomon like this. Mason quickly said, That's not it. High Mage Solomon, listen to me. This Mafa Merlin likes to act pathetic to trick people. Don't be tricked. Solon, see to the young Manchi. This time, Solomon just ignored Mason's words and directly asked Solon to send him out. Young Master Manchi, please follow me. High Mage Solomon, listen to me. Mason was still struggling to make his case, but unfortunately, Solon was already taking him out of the box. No one really cared what else he had to say. As far as Lin Yun and Solomon were concerned, this was only a minor interlude. Neither of them was concerned about the antics of this second young master of the Manchi family. The atmosphere in the box became harmonious once again after Mason's departure. The auction also carried on, and after about half an hour, Lin Yun finally got 2 of the remaining materials that he needed for the mana baptism. Compared to the previous bidding on the Styx water, these 2 purchases went a lot smoother, not attracting the attention of many others. He got them for less than 10,000 gold apiece. 3 of the 4 materials were already in his hands, and Lin Yun was quite relaxed as he continued to chat idly with Solomon, waiting for the last of the required materials to appear. While they were talking, knocking sounds could be heard at the door of the box. This time, it was Manchi himself, followed by a dejected Mason. The young lad had probably been properly taught a lesson by Manchi after his return. Although he still looked at Lin Yun with indignation, he didn't dare to open his mouth. "I am truly sorry. High Mage Solomon, I failed to discipline my son Mason, and he offended you and your guest. I'm here to apologize on his behalf." Manchi had his head lowered as he entered, even though Solomon didn't put much weight to the matter, as he sympathized with the woes of parenting. Even if he cared, he wouldn't make things awkward for Manchi now, especially since Mafa hadn't seemed to mind a raving. A trivial matter. President Manchi didn't need to come here personally for that. Solomon smiled politely while shaking his head. As if just remembering, he brought up another subject. "Oh right, President Manchi, Mason said you needed something. I wonder what it is?" "Haha, it is also a trivial matter." Manchi let out a dry laugh, inwardly cursing to himself at the old geezer Solomon was clearly playing dumb. "I clearly looked for you for an important matter. Otherwise, how could I let Mason pass a message instead of waiting for the end of the auction? But that old geezer is good. He asked me about it in front of so many people. Damn, it's not like I can ask whether he wants to conspire against the remains of the Merlin house while we're in front of so many people." But even though Manchi was inwardly cursing, a smile was still plastered on his face. "All right, High Mage Solomon, I haven't congratulated you yet for managing to obtain that Hell Destroyer scroll. I believe that the achievements of the Sage Tower will rise another step with this scroll. It's truly worth celebrating. Haha, it's only a badly damaged Hell Destroyer incantation. If not for the fact that the people from the Ash Tower were determined to get it, I might not have gotten so heated in the bidding." Hearing the 2 old foxes putting on their acts, Lin Yun was getting somewhat annoyed, but it felt too awkward to say that he wanted to leave, so he could only sit there and endure, longing for his last acquisition to appear on the stage. Once he got it, he would take his leave from the box. Fortunately, Lin Yun didn't have to wait long. A few minutes after, the 4th reagent that he needed for the mana baptism appeared. Next item, a bottle of red flame fish oil. After Khadgar announced that the next item was the red flame fish oil, Lin Yun suddenly became lively. In fact, it wasn't just Lin Yun. The eyes of the numerous alchemists of the venue instantly fell upon that small glass bottle. The bottle on the auction stand was the size of a person's thumb and was filled with a red liquid. This was the rumored red flame fish oil. The red flame fish oil didn't add any special effects, but it could neutralize the negative reactions between all kinds of materials. This was something of incalculable value to any alchemist. A peak alchemist could rely on a bottle of red flame fish oil to compound a potion of the great alchemist rank, while a peak great alchemist could even touch the realm of a master alchemist with a bottle of red flame fish oil. This was like raising the best potion one could make by an entire rank. Moreover, red flame fish oil was extremely rare on the market. Even an event like the Blackhorn auction hadn't seen the slightest shadow of red flame fish oil for several years. Nothing could be done about it, as red flame fish could only be found in the sea neighboring Spark Island. This wasn't a place one could casually visit, as there would frequently be king-level sea beasts roaming the place. If an ordinary mercenary group entered that part of the sea, they would probably be swallowed by a frightening sea beast within a few minutes. Without 1 or 2 powerful high mages to keep watch, they simply couldn't go there, and if insisted on going anyways, they would be throwing their lives away. Furthermore, the red flame fish wasn't easy to handle either. They had no fighting strength, but they naturally had extremely high temperatures and always moved in groups, often numbering in the thousands. When they swam together, the entire area around them would be constantly boiling, and even many frightening king-level sea beasts weren't willing to appear in front of them. A group of red flame fish swimming through the vast sea, causing the water to boil wherever they went. No matter how powerful a fleet was, in front of this terrifying power, they might have trouble just surviving. The one who procured this small bottle of red flame fish oil had likely suffered great difficulties in procuring it. The alchemists in the venue instantly sank into a fanatical state once this bottle of red flame fish oil appeared in the auction. Khadgar had yet to declare the starting price when a middle-aged alchemist called out his bid of 100,000 gold. "Hey, Alchemist Mana, you are a bit too anxious." Khadgar rubbed his forehead, not knowing whether to laugh or cry at the alchemist's reaction. "I can't do anything about it. All my liquid assets add up to a total of 100,000 gold. I can't compete with others, so I might as well call the first price to get over it." This middle-aged man named Mana had a pretty good attitude, and following Khadgar's teasing, he actually pointed at the rest of the venue and smiled bitterly, somewhat easing the tension brought by the red flame fish oil. Very well. Since Alchemist Mana already made an offer, then the starting price of this bottle of red flame fish oil will be 100,000 gold, and the minimum bid increment will be 10,000. 150,000 gold. 170,000. 200,000 gold. Khadgar had barely finished his sentence when voices began calling out their bids. The relatively poor alchemist Mana truly didn't have a chance to bid. Linyan knew that he wouldn't get this one without spending a large amount. 300,000 gold. Just as Linyan was hesitating on whether he should bid early or wait, Manchi announced a new price. Linyan closed his mouth. Good. Even the Manchi family wants this item. It seems that this red flame fish oil truly won't be sold for a low price. Linyan's guess was right. Manchi's bid couldn't quell the fervor of the many alchemists, as it was immediately followed by a bid of 450,000. The jump in price was crazily high. 700,000 gold. When Manchi increased the price to 700,000, the enthusiasm of the alchemists began to cool down. That price was truly a bit too high, and many of the alchemists who had just wanted to try putting in a bid were eliminated at this point. The only ones left that could participate were a few great alchemists, because the average alchemist couldn't afford this kind of money. Even if this bottle of red flame fish oil could let them compound a potion that exceeded their level, it would only be a great alchemist-level potion. Such a potion wouldn't sell for enough to warrant such a high price. But if it was for a master-level potion, this bottle of red flame fish potion could still be considered a decent investment at its current price. Obviously, Manchi was very pleased with the price he had quoted. After the venue calmed down, Manchi slowly sat down in his seat, faintly leaning toward the back of his chair and smiling as if everything was going as planned. But that smile didn't last long as the young mage sitting not far from him stood up. 800,000 gold. The smile on Manchi's face became strange. Manchi had considered many possible turns that the bidding war could have taken, such as the great alchemist of the Silver Moon mercenaries bidding against him, or Solomon deciding to join in, or Thorpe wishing to acquire it. He'd even considered the possibility that Khadgar would personally try to bid, but Manchi definitely hadn't thought that after his bid of 700,000 gold, the young Merlin would place the next bid. This was 800,000 gold after all, not 80,000 gold or 8,000 gold. A few months ago, that young Merlin couldn't even pay the debt to his uncle and had almost been forced to give up his house. How could he suddenly place a bid of 800,000 gold now? What's going on? Manchi couldn't make sense of this. Did I guess wrong? Was that Merlin brat not backed up by Fallow of the Blackhorn auction? It might really be the case. He glanced around the box again and noted Mafa Merlin is clearly sitting next to Solomon, while Fallow was sitting with Solon. This obviously shows his status relative to the others here. In this box, Solomon and Merlin have far higher status than Solon and Fallow. What's more, even if Fallow is thought highly of by Khadgar, he definitely can't take out a huge sum of 800,000 gold. This Mafa Merlin definitely has another source of funding. But if it's not Fallow, who is it? Solomon. At this point, Manshi gave Solomon a suspicious glance. Solomon grinned as he noticed the strange look, but simply turned a blind eye. This time, Solomon's mood was actually quite good, especially when he saw Manshi's puzzled expression. 850,000 gold. Manshi was thinking, but unfortunately, the auction wouldn't wait, so he had no choice but to make a new bid after some hesitation. This was a price that was already painful to Manshi. The Twin Moons Chamber of Commerce was extremely rich in Thousand Sails City, and their wealth couldn't be easily challenged. But paying so much for a bottle of red flame fish oil couldn't but make him feel bad. And without giving him any time to feel better, that wretched Merlin's voice echoed again. 900,000 gold. Manshi frowned and stared at Lin Yin for a while before asking in a cold voice. It seems that Mage Merlin is quite interested in this bottle of red flame fish oil. It's not bad, Lin Yin calmly said while thinking. You two old foxes have been acting for a while. Shouldn't it be my turn now? When he heard Lin Yun's nonchalant answer, Manshi frowned, and a twitching vein could be seen on his forehead. But regardless of what happened, the competition for the red flame fish oil would continue, as this was something that the great alchemist of his family wanted. 950,000 gold, Manshi bid. Every syllable gave him the urge to spit blood. 1 million gold. But immediately, another bid was made, and it still came from the young mage next to him. Manshi couldn't accept this. Manshi very much wanted to ask, isn't your flashing gold chamber of commerce nearly bankrupt? How could you act so improper at an auction? It would be fine if it was others, but how could you do this to me, the family head of the Manshi family? 1,100,000 golds. Manshi clenched his teeth and added another 100,000 gold to the bid, hoping that it would scare away that wretched Maffa Merlin. But 1,200,000 gold. Manshi's face was already pale. He looked at Lin Yun with murder in his eyes. His next words didn't contain the slightest hint of hypocritical courtesy, only dripping, unconcealed hostility. Mage Merlin, going against the Manshi family isn't a wise decision. The weather is pretty good today. Good. Manshi muttered 3 times in a row and suddenly stood up before taking Mason and leaving the Sage Tower's box. He didn't even bid farewell to Solomon on his way out. President Manshi's poise is truly. Looking at Manshi's retreating back, Lin Yun made a sneering comment, but trailed off. Solomon smiled, not denying his words, yet not agreeing. In fact, the doubt in Solomon's heart wasn't inferior to Manshi's. Although the two had never been in contact, Solomon had started paying attention to this young mage a few months ago. At that time, that young mage had sent a bottle of Spectrum Potion to the Sage Tower and came out with a pass with the highest privileges. He then used it to stay in the library for about 2 months. During these 2 months, although Solomon didn't visit the library, Solon had brought him information about the young man every day, what kind of book Mage Merlin had read that day, notes on what Mage Merlin did the next day, what kind of opinion Mage Merlin shared the day after that. Solomon even remembered some things that Lin Yun didn't necessarily remember, because Solomon knew that this young mage was very remarkable, far more remarkable than anyone thought. Solon didn't even know that first day, when he brought Lin Yun's opinion on the Fanruzen formula, Solomon had returned to his study to write a letter to Star Sage Juyi. There were 4 pieces of data in this letter, and it quickly led to an upsurge of discussion in the circles of mages across the kingdom. It wasn't only Star Sage Juyi, it wasn't just the Cloud Tower. Many powerful mages interested in the Fanruzen formula began participating in this discussion, though letters. And even more mages started acknowledging that these 4 pieces of data might very well fix the errors of the Fanruzen formula. Many had sent their congratulations to Solomon because they felt that the information he had shared constituted a major discovery that would be recorded in the annals of magic. Reading these congratulatory messages, Solomon could only force a smile. Only Solomon himself knew that these 4 pieces of data didn't belong to him, but rather to a young mage that was only 20 years old. But Solomon wasn't sure whether that young mage had calculated and analyzed these 4 pieces of data himself, or if he had heard about it from someone else. Thus, for the moment, Solomon could only urge him to stay and try to bring up the topic of magic during their idle chat, try and probe him and see whether this young mage's magic knowledge was really deep enough to clearly understand the mistakes in the Fanruzen formula. It was hard to say for the time being, but one thing was certain. The young mage was definitely much better acquainted with magic theory than his peers. He was even sure that it surpassed the great mage realm, because in the discussion just now, Solomon felt that this young mage was definitely holding back and not fully showing off what he knew and understood. But even this much was frightening enough. A 20-year-old with the knowledge of a great mage, and given time, let alone his disciple Solon, even Ryan of the Monchi family might be left in the dust. Right now, this young mage was frantically competing over alchemy materials, just as some incredible potions appeared. What did this mean? Solomon had already been having some suspicions about whether the great alchemist backing the young Merlin actually existed. Could the alchemist actually be Mafa Merlin himself? 2 months ago, Solomon would never have believed this. The reason was very simple. Everyone knew that a good mage wasn't necessarily a good alchemist, but a good alchemist was definitely a good mage. This might sound weird, but it was well backed by history. Alchemy originally came from magic, and the deeper the alchemy, the deeper the magic knowledge needed to be. Many theories, many conclusions couldn't be understood without enough magic knowledge, and some fields of alchemy required enough mana to conduct them. Choosing a very simple example, one of the Sage Tower's 3 big shots, Thorpe. Before advancing to become a high mage, Thorpe had been stuck at the peak of the alchemist level for 10 years. But when he became a high mage, his alchemy suddenly advanced by leaps and bounds, and in a month, he was also a great alchemist. Mafa Merlin had just become a mage, so how could he have the level of a great alchemist? But now, Solomon was really doubtful. A mage with the knowledge of a great mage. In theory, he should already have the ability to craft the Spectrum Potion. Moreover, he was now going all out bidding on a few alchemy materials. Solomon was sitting in the corner of the box, bursting into a violent cough from time to time. Finally, his eyes, which had been so filled with hesitation, suddenly became resolute. The bidding on the red flame fish oil had already come to an end, and Lin Yun had used 1,200,000 gold to get the last material needed for his mana baptism. Once he got hold of the red flame fish oil, the auction was already over for Lin Yun. But to many people, it had just begun, because the last item would be the grand finale. This was a tradition of the Blackhorn auction. The most precious and shocking items would be auctioned at the end, both as a way to increase the suspense and a way to express respect. It was like how in a story, the most important character would always appear last to save the day. The next lot is the finale of the auction, Khadgar said while lifting the silk cloth that was on the pedestal, exposing a red potion and a black potion. I introduced to everyone the volcano potion and the ghost potion. Oh my god, is that really a volcano potion and a ghost potion? How could these appear in Thousand Sails City? Khadgar had yet to finish when the entire venue broke into a commotion. If one could say that the auction of the Hell Destroyer incantation and the red flame fish oil had created a stir, then what these 2 potions brought was an explosive shock. Most of the people who attended the Blackhorn auction were very knowledgeable, so how could they not know of the famous volcano potion and ghost potion? In fact, this wasn't as simple as hearing about it. These 2 potions approaching the Master Alchemist level had already become legendary existences in the hearts of these people. Able to make mana burst like a volcano, the volcano potion that could let a great mage instantaneously reach the high mage realm. Able to turn the body into nothingness, the ghost potion that made one immune to injuries. These 2 potions could be said to be at the peak of the great alchemist realm. Any great alchemist that mastered these 2 potions would be able to tread on the path to become a master alchemist. Moreover, a great alchemist that reached this level wouldn't compound these potions rashly. Firstly, because the materials were prohibitively expensive, preventing many great alchemists from being able to afford it. And secondly, because these 2 potions required a lot of time and effort to create. It would usually take somewhere from a dozen days to a month to compound one. If anything went wrong, the time and money invested would be wasted. The appearance of either of these two potions would attract countless forces, and they wouldn't hesitate to empty their coffers to obtain them. And now, the two potions appeared at the same time. Could there suddenly be two great alchemists with the potential to become master alchemists that appeared at the same time in Thousand Sail City? Or was it the same person? I think that everyone must feel strange. Since there are two potions, why are they being auctioned together? Khadgar said this before shamelessly stopping there to build suspense. He waited for everyone to be on the edge of their seat before he unhurriedly said, "The reason is simply that these two potions were compounded by the same person." The same person? The shock caused by this answer was no less than the initial shock of seeing the two potions themselves. Compounding one such potion was already a very formidable feat, and yet someone had actually compounded both of them together? What was that? Was this person just deliberately trying to shock people? But I can let everyone know that this future master is very, very young, a lot younger than you imagine. Khadgar explained up to this point before stopping. No matter how much people asked, he wouldn't agree to leak another word about it. An old fox like Khadgar knew what he should say and what he shouldn't. Saying that the same person made both potions was fine, and teasing their young age was fine too. It was only to raise the price of the potions, giving them a certain flavor. He would run into issues if he said any more. He managed to get closer to Mage Merlin before the Sage Tower with great difficulty, but before he established a solid relationship, Khadgar wouldn't put this future master alchemist in the limelight. That would be counterproductive. Khadgar's flashy and merciless introduction piqued everyone's interest. Two potions infinitely close to the master alchemist realm and compounded by the same person. Khadgar had actually come up with such a fierce finale for this auction. Khadgar himself was a great alchemist brimming with talent. He was only 40 years old when he stepped into the great alchemist realm. And now, Khadgar even used the words younger than you imagine to describe the mysterious alchemist. Just how young was the alchemist who compounded these potions? 35 years old? Maybe even 30 years old? Younger still? Just thinking that this might be the case made everyone in the venue feel numb. All these people sitting in the auction room weren't simple characters. There was no lack of leaders from major forces here. They had many alchemists themselves, so how could they not know how hard it was to nurture a talented alchemist? Regardless of how talented an apprentice alchemist was, they needed time to mature. The abstruse and unfathomable alchemy theories and the boundless sea of alchemy formulas both needed a lot of time to digest and understand. Many apprentice alchemists failed to ever become full-fledged alchemists. It could be said that a 30-year-old alchemist was a rare talent. As for someone like Khadgar that had become a great alchemist at the age of 40, he was unique in Thousand Sail City. But now, Khadgar himself had described this great alchemist that had compounded a ghost potion and a volcano potion as younger than they could imagine. Although Khadgar didn't say how young the person was, everyone here could more or less guess that the age was younger than 35, or else Khadgar wouldn't have exaggerated so much. The Blackhorn Auction House had already taken root in Thousand Sail City for 20 years, so everyone present knew of the character of the chief auctioneer. This chief auctioneer had always been rigorous, and even during an auction, Khadgar had never excessively exaggerated the introduction of an item being auctioned. When Khadgar said that there was only one of some item, even if you searched all of No Scent, you definitely wouldn't find a second identical item. It was the same now. Khadgar had said that this was a great alchemist younger than they'd imagined, so this great alchemist was definitely no older than 35. Thinking about it, a great alchemist that was younger than 35 and could enter the realm of a master anytime. Such a crazy possibility made everyone in the audience feel feverish. They all made guesses and discussed the possibilities. The interest that these forces held toward this future master alchemist even surpassed the value of the two potions themselves. In just a few minutes, there were at least 7 or 8 major figures that had called for their most trusted and capable subordinates, whispering them some orders. In short, before bidding even started on the final lot, it had already caused a huge commotion across the entire venue. The following two potions will start at the low price of 300,000 gold, and the minimum bid increment is 30,000 gold. Seeing that he had reached the effect he wanted to achieve, Khadgar officially called for bids on the final lot with a pleased smile. 1 million gold. Khadgar's words had just finished when a voice came out from a box on the second floor. These 2 potions will belong to our Ash Tower. The voice that announced the bid was the one who had bid against Solomon for the Hell Destroyer incantation. The hatred and hostility between the Sage Tower and Ash Tower could be traced back to the distant Third Dynasty. These 2 forces residing in the eastern part of the kingdom were constantly fighting each other. They fought over everything: natural resources, talents, knowledge, equipment. They were completely unscrupulous in their attempts to suppress each other. As early as several hundred years ago, there was a large-scale war which resulted in many mages losing their lives. It also planted the seeds of hatred in the hearts of the survivors. Although there had been no open conflicts for the next 100-plus years, the battles in the dark were even more intense than they had been before the Great War. Since the Ash Tower had placed a bid, the Sage Tower would naturally follow, unwilling to fall behind. Although the Hell Destroyer incantation had cost 1,400,000 gold, half of it had been covered by Lin Yun, so Solomon still had enough funds to put up a fight for something of this caliber. You said these potions would belong to the Ash Tower? Khadgar had yet to say anything when Solomon's coughing voice came out of the Sage Tower box. 1,100,000 gold. This clear provocation was a challenge to the Ash Tower's reputation. So how could the Ash Tower allow that? A cold snort came out before another bid followed. 1,300,000 gold. 1,400,000 gold. 1,500,000 gold. 1,600,000 gold. 1,700,000 gold. The 2 men kept outbidding each other, and in no time at all, the price had reached 1,700,000 gold without anyone else getting involved. This was such a big venue with so many forces, yet no one else had placed a bid. Who didn't know that these 2 eastern forces were irreconcilable adversaries? It seemed that they were fighting over 2 potions right now, but they were mainly suppressing each other. This auction was akin to a battle between 2 major magic forces. But it wasn't as if everyone was scared of these 2 forces. All those sitting here today were great and influential figures. If they found something that they felt was worth it and was highly beneficial to them, they would go for it even if they risked offending another power. The problem was that they hadn't reached that stage yet. The ownership of the 2 potions had yet to be decided, so offending 2 forces at once wasn't such a good idea. It was better to wait. Wait until the outcome of their battle was decided, and it wouldn't be too late to bid afterwards. No matter how overbearing the 2 forces were, it wouldn't stop others from participating, right? Even if they could threaten them, could they threaten the Blackhorn auction house too? Thus, everyone waited for one of the sides to drop out of the bidding war. Fortunately, it didn't last long. Once the price reached 1,700,000 gold, Solomon couldn't keep bidding. There was nothing he could do about it, as even if Lin Yun shared half of the expenses of the Hell Destroyer, he still had to pay 700,000 gold for it. This wasn't a small amount. Spending another 2 million gold on 2 potions wasn't something that the Sage Tower could handle. Of course, even if they couldn't handle it, Solomon definitely wouldn't just directly admit defeat. Forget it. The Sage Tower doesn't lack those 2 potions. I shall take pity on your Ash Tower and let you have them. And the High Mage from the Ash Tower only sneered back. This bidding war between the 2 forces definitely ended up as a win for the Ash Tower. But the win of the Ash Tower didn't mean that the auction for the 2 potions had ended. On the contrary, the true auction could finally begin. Just as expected, Solomon's withdrawal was followed by a new bid. 1,800,000 gold. Lin Yun glanced toward the source of the voice and saw that the bid had come from a middle-aged man that seemed to be about 40 years old with a tall stature and a stern gaze. He was carrying a dark greatsword on his back. A thick, bloody smell came from the greatsword. He was definitely a powerful person that had been through an abundance of slaughter, as only such a person could handle the murderous weapon on his back. That is Sasu, Silver Moon Mercenary Group's leader. The blow of losing the auction to the Ash Tower didn't seem as great as many would imagine. Solomon was smiling. When he saw a bit of puzzlement in Lin Yun's face, he patiently explained, During your father's time, he cooperated a lot with them. The Silver Moon mercenary group's wealth isn't ordinary. Watch, the Ash Tower will quickly end up crying. 2 million gold. The middle-aged high mage felt like weeping. When he placed the bid, his voice was hoarse. Although he had defeated Solomon, the Ash Tower couldn't keep going. 2 million gold wasn't a small amount at all. Even a major force like the Ash Tower would take a large hit if they had to pay out so much money. 2,500,000 gold. When the price reached 2,500,000 gold, there was a long pause, during which the Ash Tower seemed to be struggling, before they placed a bid of 2,600,000 gold. But right as they bid, 3 million gold. This time, the Ash Tower box was completely silent. It wasn't just the Ash Tower. The entire venue was silent. Everyone was looking at Sasu with shock and disbelief. Before the bidding had begun, no one would have expected such a shocking number. This was 3 million gold. If invested in any industry of Thousand Sails City, it would be enough to cause an earthquake. That's right, the 2 potions on the pedestal could be described as valuable. It could even be said that they were some of the finest items ever auctioned at the Blackhorn auction house. But no matter how valuable or how great they were they worth such a huge amount? 3 million gold was enough to invite a real master alchemist. If someone else did this, many of those in the venue might think that person was a lunatic, but this was Sasu. Sasu's insight had been famous in Thousand Sails City. In over a dozen years, none of his decisions had turned out to be mistakes, including investing in the flashing Gold Chamber of Commerce and having a good relationship with the Sage Tower. In one matter after another, people felt like he had made a crazy choice. But afterwards, they saw that the vision of the leader of the Silver Moon mercenaries was far-reaching. Could it be that it was the same for these 2 potions? Thinking of this, a few people who still had the means to compete couldn't help but be swayed. But even if they were swayed, this was 3 million gold. After all, their spirit of competitiveness just rose up for a bit before falling again. 3 million gold was a bid that scared everyone. Leader Sasu of the Silver Moon mercenaries has placed a bid for 3 million gold. Is there anyone willing to bid higher? At this time, Khadgar had a slightly flushed face on stage, and his voice was a bit louder than usual. Although the Blackhorn auction house had made quite a few huge sales in these past few years, to have an auction that would have bid increments of hundreds of thousands before finally reaching 3 million gold, it was the first time even for Khadgar himself.